Let's close tabs, alright. Close. Hello everyone, how are we all doing? Moderator activity on that. Have no idea what's going on quickly. Thing is just being a bit weird. Hello everyone. Oh, it's working. Hello! Let me just deal with the screen's gone a bit weird. Live chat. Pop out chat. Ah, that's sorted. Sound is working according to my mic. According to my headphones. Hopefully my headphones are not double dipping. Right then, so if sound's coming through and everything is now working, hello everyone. Let's see if I can maintain all the different screens working and happy. This is going to fail miserably, but we're going to try, aren't we? We're going to try. Oh, you're back again. Hello. You pop it. Hello. Yes, you're here. There is a big fluffy research assistant here. He's here to make sure his papa doesn't overwork. He's here to make sure his papa remembers when it's time to feed fluffy research assistants. And most importantly, he's here because he'd really, really like some Kallaxes to be procured because they're getting in the way of his snoozing time. Have you seen him how limited his snoozing space is with all these boxes of books over the place? Honestly, he needs Kallaxes. Hello everyone, questions are live on the system. And I'm going to say hello to everyone. Hello. Oh, good lord. Oh, thank you, Bob Fry. Oh, God, I have a doggy hiding up. Oh. Hello. Hello. Can I take my headphones off? Yes, I can. Then they'll stop getting licked by you. Hello. Thank you, Bob Fry. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. I will be answering naval history questions in a second. Alright, I'm just dealing with an overly amorous poodle. Hello. Yes, it's okay. It's all good. It's all good. Papa's okay. Papa's fine. And there are nice people watching. So we're going to answer some naval history questions, aren't we? No. They don't want to just look at you. I know you're gorgeous, but they don't want to just look at you. Okay? Down we go. Oh, good lord. Hello. Wait. Good boy. Go on. I know your brother's woofing, but everything will be okay. He can't get in here at the moment, despite him being mildly high. So he won't be chasing you around. Don't worry, you're safe. He's not going to keep making you exercise. Autofocus work. Autofocus work. Let's tap lock, because that might help things. Yeah, see? It sorts out its own focusing. Hello everyone. Let's make sure this is in live chat. And we'd say thank you everyone already who's supporting it. This evening I am raising money for Kallaxes because I need a lot of them. How much do I need for my new bookshelves? Well, honestly, I've got a slide. I will just go to the image and go... Hang on, I've got the slideshow, haven't I, from... If I put that up? Yeah. So, bum. That's the Forester class. I actually do have, he says, hopefully, a slide which shows all this. Because I'm that kind of person. And, yeah, it works out at about... I'm going to be spending somewhere in the region of £700, I think, on shelving. Which is okay, it's understandable. My original budget for it was about £200 worth of wood. Because I was going to do it myself. But I can't do it now because of the pneumonia. And I've had to spend that money instead on basically hiring someone to do a load of jobs. The ammonia is fun. It's both your energy to do things and your money to do things. But yes, it's a lot of the Kallax system because they can take heavy duty books, and because I need a lot of them. And they will go in down here, upstairs. They'll go everywhere. Basically, my section of property is going to be mostly Kallaxes, so it's a lot of them. So thank you very much to Bob Fry, because that's put me on the way already. Oh, caramba. I never thought I'd be spending this much money at IKEA, but the Kallaxes are for me. There's all sorts of other things I'm having to buy. It's because I can't build it myself. That's the thing, is normally I would build it myself. I just don't have the thing, and it's taken too long for me to recover from it to be done. But as I keep being told by people, recovering from pneumonia is not a quick task because it drains all the energy out of your systems. So thank you everyone for your support. The bot should be active. Action cues. Bot toggle, yes. Enabled. All the bots should be enabled as you gave them to me. Hello, Runa. Are there any book sources you recommend for researching early guided missile tech? Yes, actually. There's a very good one, Air Defense at Sea, called by Hill Norton, who was a Royal Navy Admiral. Roger Hill Norton, I think. Anyway, it's a really good Air Defense at Sea. It's a really good book, and it's a very good explanation of not just early missile tech, but up to medium period missile tech. It does up until about the Falklands War. So it does the evolution of air defense at sea from about 1930 till about 1980, and it's a really good cover on that one. Hello, yes, I'm getting lots of messages in the DMs. Yes, you can crash the party. Let me see if I can assist you to crash the party. Thank you, Draken Red. Let me set it up. So, for you to crash the party, I have to, if I remember correctly, get Discord working on a reject all cookies. Open Discord in browser. And I think my display name is Dr. Alexander Clarke at AC Naval History. Let's see if it works. Oh, good lord, they're doing the break-in pattern thing. Ugh, I hate that when they do that. It's so weird. No, that's not... I need to open the second Discord, because if I open regular Discord, it's not going to like it. Because the app doesn't like to be opened multiple times. Let me see what I can do. No. It's trying to set me up with a new account, not my current account. That's just being annoying, Discord. Let's see, what can we do? It's a nice idea, but can we get it to work? Actually. It's just being annoying now. Discord is just being annoying. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, everyone. So, let's see what questions we've got coming in while I try and argue with this one. But this is the trouble. This is why we have trouble with this thing. It doesn't disappear stuff. It doesn't like... Discord does not like have multiple apps open. Luckily, I knew there was nothing in Fleet Chat which would be really sensitive to anyone. I have to be kind to Fu today. Be nice. A nice way. I haven't started on any... Thank you, Black Bear Maximus. Can the patron alternate history British Empire Strikes Back be swapped to land on Thursday 26th? So it's nice on birthday. Let me have a look at that. On the 26th. Yeah, we can swap with that. I don't think Andron will mind that being swapped with theirs. So yeah, I'll do the swap. This is just being weird now these days. Cut and paste. Cut. Paste. Cut. Paste. Stop being a pest. Cut and paste. Yay. Done. It did work before you pushed the update, yes. The update is now not being happy. Integrations. Hang on, there is one thing we forgot to check with the update, didn't we? Yeah, they're all enabled. The YouTube and others are enabled. It's all supposed to be working. Okay, let's answer some questions, and I'll leave the tech team to try and work that out, and then I'll try and figure out how to bring Fleet onto this app, onto this this evening as well. And while I'm doing that, I will have debates with Discord. Hello, that's better. I might have found a way, Fleet. I might have found a way. Right then. Fleet of Oceans. That could be working, and let me go to the sound and go add. And that should be working, he says, because that should be working.
Well, we'll have to wait and see if it comes through on the live, because I feel like I'm double.
Yes,
yes,
so, that is the correct book. J.R. Hill. Hill Norton was another historian, another admiral turned historian. Oh, good God, there have been so many admirals turned historians. But yeah, that J.R. Hill is the correct one. That is the correct book. I'm glad I could help with that one. I've got it somewhere in here. In these boxes, there is somewhere I could grab it and would you be able to show it to you. Chandlord, if you could bring back 3 capital ships, battleship or battlecruiser for each of the big navies models, too, Germany USSR included. USSR had 3? That would just be the Ganguts. Which one would you bring back for each navy and why? You can only bring ships that are at least launched and they are in brand new pristine condition without any refit. Well, the Germans, if you're bringing back 3, you have the 2 Scharnhorst and 2 Bismarck. So basically, who do you not like? Because you've got 4 options and you're bringing back 3. I'm not going to make that decision because whoever I pick, I'm just being nasty to one of them. If I was bringing back 2, I'd bring back 1 of each. But if I'm bringing back 3, then I'm bringing back a whole class of one group and I'm bringing back only 1 of the other group. You know, it's being rude. The others which are larger, I can bring back 3 of, but I can't for Germany. For Italy, Vittorio Veneto, Giulio Cesare, of course, and Roma, because I just think she could have. I just think the way she went was cruel. For Japan.
So where are we? Let me have a look.
It's got to be. Ooh. Nagato would definitely be one of my choices. Hiei, I think, will be my choice from that class, and mainly because she gets so forgotten, Musashi. Because I have to bring back one of those 2, and I'm gonna bring back the forgotten sister. Because everyone remembers remembers the class naming sister, they forget the big sister. And we have been joined by Fleet of Oceans. If you're not sure, he has joined us.
I'm here. The Doctor Clarke has very graciously allowed me to dive in on this one, which is only right considering he gets to jump in on my show.
Actually, it's kind of nice because I was going to be saying I'm going to be calling in tomorrow night from a hotel room to your one.
Oh, that's going to be interesting.
So I could be in a bath towel, having just been in a hot tub, all sorts of things.
Oh, for God's sake.
I could be relaxing poolside and calling you into you because I'm driving up home and I've had to have a full physical this week and basically I'm not allowed to drive for more than 3 hours. So I'm medically not supposed to drive, so I've had to break the trip up into 2 days. And the only hotel I could find which has free time and free space for me to do, and also I'm allowed to do a little bit of exercise, I'm allowed to do swimming. So I'm going to stop at a place. The only place I could find, which was reasonably priced, was actually a nice spa hotel to the south of Exeter, which is about the right distance up. And it's a lovely place, but there is a massive reduction on Booking.com. I'm not sure if there was supposed to be, but I took it quickly. It's one of those scenarios where you sit there and go, you are a far too fancy a hotel to be offering at that price, but it's including breakfast, I'll take it.
Well, there you are, I suppose. It's one of the ways in which things can happen, I suppose.
Thank you. Right. We can hear the food. That's good. That's good. I'm glad everyone can hear the foo. And thank you for all the thank you for the super chats coming in. I should be keeping a running financial total, but my brain is not capable of focusing the maths in at the moment. I will try.
Hot tub historian.
Okay.
Oh, for the love of God, no, not again.
Oh, I like Hot Tub Historian. My friend over here, the people who I know who own the lodges have said I can go film it in the lodges over a couple of days there and just, use the lodge when it's not being used. So Hot Tub Historian will return.
Are we going to have to do a thing where the Fleet of Oceans VTuber and the Hot Tub Historian do a side-by-side? Because that seems to be something that's happening.
It could be, but also, more importantly, we could try and arrange to do one of the random ramblings, the Fleet's random ramblings, in a hot tub as a group.
That would be funny.
I think Foxo and I'm trying to remember his name that I'm supposed to. His call sign, not his real name, would have fun.
I don't know if we'd get Foxo and Dragon, to be fair.
Yes, I think you would, especially if you told them that they could put a face mask on you as well.
I'm not sure I trust the pair of them in a hot tub together.
Honestly, me and Drac have been trying to work out the camera angles for a hot tub for years.
Oh.
For various, honestly, historical, scientific reasons. Not just because the two of us are very sad individuals who are trying to figure out whether we could film a naval battle, a miniature naval battle in a hot tub.
Yeah.
I think we've got to the Americans, the British, because I think I've done the Japanese, and so that is the Americans and British, and I've done the Italians and the Germans. So it's the Americans and the British we've got to, and for the British, in nicest way, it's going to be Renown is going to be one of them, and you and I would both get killed.
Be another.
Really? If we're going to save Renown, do we need to save Hood as well? Because we've got to save Warspite, because otherwise Drac will kill us.
Yes, we have to save Warspite. It only has.
That's our own survival in need. And then I think
we have to save Warspite.
And then I'd say a Nelrod. I'd probably go Rodney.
Honestly?
Yeah.
You know what? Scratch that. I won't save Hood. Sorry, I won't.
Because then I've got Renowned, Warspite, and Rodney, and let's be honest, if that you heard those three were coming towards you, you would not be. You know you're not in for a good night.
Is it sad to say I want Vanguard back?
I know you can want Vanguard back. You can have Vanguard if you want. You can have Vanguard and Hood and Warspite if that's what your trio is.
Oh no! My trio would be Vanguard, Warspite, and.
We have been so well trained by Drac.
It's not training it. I don't want him showing up in full plate armor with a mace to bludgeon my head in.
The fact that he could bring a selection of maces and go choose which one I bludgeon your head in worries me.
Also, this is a man who I was talking to a couple of years ago. Said, "Oh yeah, by the way, I've got 2 tons of gun cotton under my bed." I'm like, "I'm sorry, what?"
Yes, he has. He's shown it to me. In a nice way, I would not be sleeping on that bed.
Knight, it's not about being better. We know Hood is a better ship militarily than Renown. It's just that we're talking about that you're bringing them back, basically. And if they're coming back in the modern era, 9 options out of 10 is for preservation.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as combat vessels.
Mm-hmm.
So in that case, then it's more down to what's their value historically, sympathetically, emotionally. If that makes sense.
Yeah. I am just doing an insertion on the streamer bot. So if you want to move on to the American ships you'd like to preserve.
Oh, I would actually. I would like. We've already got Texas. I'd like a Colorado. I don't care which one. Probably West Virginia. I'd like. We've already got most of the NoCal Sodaks and Iowas. So we've already got them. So I probably have. Wow, that really does. The hard thing isn't picking what to bring; it's picking what to bring that doesn't already exist.
Well, basically, you just basically cut out the Iowas. Texas you can't bring because she already exists, and I would want to save Texas. So you are sort of South Dakotas.
The 12-inch ships, the last standing US 12-inch dreadnought. I'd bring her.
Okay.
Bring her. I can't remember the name.
I'm going to stretch something because whilst I don't agree they're battle cruisers, I consider them just where heavy cruisers would have been. I am going to bring an Alaska class. I'm going to use the fact that some people accuse them of being battle cruiser.
Yeah.
Because I think an Alaska would be quite cool to have. Mostly, I quite like it. Honestly, I quite like a modernized Alaska today to run around for the US Navy because they need something.
Didn't we come to the conclusion? I think I said it, and you nodded sagely that the Alaska and the Des Moines are the two endpoints of heavy cruisers. Once Washington changes the paradigm of what cruisers are.
Yeah.
And they're both basically solutions to the treaty cruiser problem. They just both go at it from different angles.
No, they're both solutions to where cruisers would be if it wasn't for the treaties.
Yeah,
they're basically the Des Moines
endpoints.
Yeah, they're basically I'm going to go for the heaviest guns possible versus I'm going to go for the fastest firing guns possible. I'm going to see how many. One's going to decide how many shells do you want to die by, and the other one's going to say how fewer shells can I kill you with. Thank you, Derp Squad.
I will point out, Knight, that I wasn't the one bringing Renown back. Blame Dr. Clarke for that one.
Renown. Sorry, Knight, you will never. I have told you this before. Hood is definitely the better warship, but I will always bring back Renown over Hood because, as much as I love Hood and Renown is my favorite. Historical value and being cute. Renown comes first.
Yeah, he was talking about Hood being more famous.
I don't care. Don't care at all. I think she's better historical value. It's my choice, my list.
Thank you, bad guy, for reminding me that Arkansas was the last 12-inch BB. Thank you.
Yeah, Arkansas. Thanks, bad guy. We have a good group in the chat tonight. Hello, Arceus. Hello, Runon. Runon's doing sterling work on trying to make the bots work. I'm not sure if the bot is working.
Yeah.
I'll catch up with it in a second.
Runon is trying his best
to get the bot working.
I think that's all of them. I'd like to, if I may, do an honourable mention.
Oh, Charles Muir, one of the Iowas had a hot tub installed for FDR. Could we manage to get? Could me and Drac manage to get that put back in for us to visit it as a museum ship?
No.
Just imagine that, me and Drac doing hot tub historians from the back of an Iowa. Russian oligarchs with your super yachts, eat your heart out. Jeff Bezos, go cry.
Am I going to have to buy one of the paddle steamers that exist in the world just to one-up you two? I'm going to have to buy one of the ocean-going paddle steamers that still exist to one-up you two.
On that level, yes.
I'd like to do an honourable mention to Yavuz for Turkey. Because,
yes,
let's bring her back.
Yes, agreed. But I think that's pretty much it. I'd also like some of the South American ones to survive because I think they'd be beautiful ships in museums. Yeah. And let's be honest, I am currently we are for the ship shape trip. So it's quite easy to justify the trip, the idea of a trip to Japan, doing Mediterranean and various other things we've got in the list there. I keep going, Drac, considering your heritage, considering the history that's out there, let's go do South America. And he's going, no. Because it is pretty darn complicated. I have to admit, it is a pretty darn complicated thing to try and organise going around South America as a group. But we'll get on to that eventually. What countries would have benefited most from buying the free Alaska class ships sometime after 1947 decommissioning? What countries would have benefited the most? Unfortunately, they're very crew intensive, so they're basically countries which are in need of a flagship of that caliber. And honestly, one of those countries would actually be Japan, but they wouldn't have been able to buy them.
Funny thing is, I actually have
Italy
put on this one.
Please
do. Because it's one of the great things about the Red Fleet timeline is where the Alaskas end up. and they end up being parceled out. France gets one to replace Richelieu, so Jean Bart sticks around, but Richelieu is replaced by an Alaska. For similar reasons, it's not about the reduction in gun capability, it's about having a flagship of similar size to replace her with some form of big gun armament. Turks get one to replace Yavuz when she bows out into a museum in the 70s. And the Netherlands buys one to lead its pair of light cruisers as a full service action group. And that was what we did. But of course, that's slightly different. But if we're talking about real history, I can't see the Netherlands buying one because they don't. I suppose they could to work with their carrier and their light cruisers. But again, they've got the carrier for flag facilities with any fleet. So it's basically the Netherlands' choice is: do we buy a light fleet carrier or do we buy an Alaska? And let's be honest here, it's not even a contest. The light fleet is a better option for the Netherlands, always. The French, if they wanted to, like even in the real timeline, if we're talking about the original timeline as we know it historically, the French buying an Alaska or possibly a pair of them is not the worst idea. Of course, this all assumes the US has preserved them to the point where the French would want to buy them, and the only time that would be the case is if they are looking to retain two capital ships and they are unwilling to, as they were historically, unwilling to pay for the upkeep of a rapidly degraded and war-used Richelieu. There's a reason why Jean Bart stuck around far longer than Richelieu did, because she was not used nearly quite as heavily during the war years, if at all. So I could definitely see them, if the Alaskas are fresh, machinery-wise, I could definitely see the, like, if there was anyone who would buy a pair, or heck, even all three of them, it would be the French.
Yeah, it's basically, the French are the options, but I would say Turkey and I would say Japan are the good historical options. Because Japan could have done with something, especially considering their position versus the Soviets.
It would also have not violated Japan's rules on not having carriers.
No. And also, it being a big gunship, it's not going to be necessarily be a threat to all the missile fleets, etc., anything, or carriers going around.
Oh, God, no.
But it's going to be enough of a status asset you can go, excuse me, have you been paying attention to me recently? Because I'm paying attention to you.
Yeah, it's also not tied to Japanese history in any way. It's not a... You know, it's not tied to any of the crimes of the past. If anything, it's a ship that slapped them in the face, and they've had to buy it in. If that makes sense.
Yes.
Oh, the questions seem to be working now. The apps seem to be...
There is just one interesting scenario, though, here, though. Because you have to remember, the three built were Alaska, Guam, and Hawaii.
Uh-huh.
Which one of those would you want Japan to buy?
Probably... Wow.
Oh, would it? Yeah. Just like
it took me a second to wrap my head around it.
That's a loaded question, my friend.
Yeah, it took me a second. I was like, wait a minute.
That's the small troll. And if the French buy Hawaii, might they think they're getting the island as well?
I don't think so. Dear. Well, it looks like the questions are back, thank God. The bot is actually functioning normally.
Woohoo! The bot is working.
That makes me want to do a torpedo is running normally.
Please don't, because then it might torpedo it. So a few weeks ago in Sci-Fi Ship Channel, we were discussing the Gladiator-class Star Destroyer. Care to weigh in? I haven't looked at the discussion yet. I haven't looked at the discussion yet,
I wouldn't give...
but honestly...
to have Dragon here right now.
My opinion of the Gladiator class is that it looks like someone decided they wanted to make a wide-mouth bass mate with a Star Destroyer. But leaving that to one side, it is actually quite a useful ship in some ways. And yeah, it's one of those scenarios where you look at it and you go, it's useful, it works. But is it really what you want for what you're doing with it? I don't know. I'd have to do more of a deep dive into it and more of a discussion of it to actually give a proper answer, and also look at the discussion you all having. But yeah, if you remind me, I'm quite happy to do another Star Destroyer examination at some point over the Christmas period.
What I wouldn't give to have Dragon here, he has firm opinions on the Gladiator class. He'd be able to talk our ears off for hours.
Yeah.
But I suppose I can bash him tomorrow for that.
Yeah. There seems to be... Steve is sharing the cube storage, the Kallax system. Yeah, they are useful. Kallaxes are useful. Unfortunately, the 25 shelf one, which Drac does have one, he was offering to me, the 5x5. I can't fit in my car, and I don't think I can fit in this office space. So mine are going to be all the 4x2s, I think. I don't think the 3x4s, etc. again work with me. So 4x2s are what I'm going to go with, because they can work well for me. I need some underframes though. That's the other fun thing. I've got to get some underframes set up. It's all going to be fun. Have I seen Drac's video about the French pre-dreadnoughts Royal Sovereign Star battleships? And if so, how much bleach was needed to clean your eyes out? Not a lot. It was a very good video, and I enjoyed it a lot.
No,
But I also know some more fun's coming, and I look forward to seeing what happens to my colleague who's currently on this call when it does. I think he might be crying a bit. But yeah. And Shivara, again, that is the correct video. That is the correct book. Sorry again about getting the wrong Admiral Hill. Look,
Fleet loves his friendships, all right. And I
you
know
love
it's not
them.
entirely correct.
You love them. It's kind of like my joy with HMS Renown reflects your joy with French ships, but whereas mine is at least to an extent justified by historical capability, yours is just pure love, and proves love is blind. And possibly deaf, dumb, and all sorts of other things. Thank you.
I'm not going to get into the debate about whether things are good or not, because we'd be here all day. I'd never get anything done, and we have more questions to answer. So I'm just going to leave that there. Besides,
the trouble
I literally
is,
had a ramblings where me and Drac went back and forth over French ships for a good long while. Unfortunately, it was in the days before ramblings were recorded, so that treasure trove of me and Drac knocking 7 bells out of each other with French
This is why we have a rule with bilge pumps that we are not allowed to talk for more than half an hour before we turn on the record button. Now, because it was when some of the bilge pumps were, the bilge pump was an hour and a half long, and we'd spent 4.5 hours on the call. And we know it's 4.5 hours on the call because, first of all, because at least one of my colleagues' partners would come in and go, Have you drunk enough? Have you drunk enough on the hour?
Oh dear. Good Lord above.
Mike 66, Ship Shape Australia questions. Any ideas when the rewards go out? And B, any date penciled in for the Trafalgar game? So far, for the Trafalgar game, I have now this space, and I have said if we cannot honestly get the space we're trying to book, then I will clear out this space and we will use this space. And that is on the fret. So, but if we haven't got anything, then the Trafalgar date will take place in October. Rewards should go out soon. I think they are currently with my colleague who is organising them. It all should be with them. I will be meeting them hopefully on Tuesday evening, and I will ask them in person. But I also know they've also been arranging everyone's passports recently for their entire family, so they could also be planning on fleeing the country and changing identities to hide from it, because they haven't done it so yet. But they will. That's not the type of person. They'll have done it. Don't worry.
Well, that'll be interesting.
Blabber Maximus, why are you now putting the Azur Lane people in there? And that is IGN Mikasa in Azur Lane.
It's not.
Okay, I'm going to say something which I would prefer I didn't know, but apparently I do know. Can someone please compare that to Juna Omagi's avatar and see how similar it is? Because that's one of my mum's Oshis from Idol, who used to be part of Idol, but are now moving to Brave. Look, in nice way, she now has pictures up on the wall, literally.
Oh, for the love of Mike, it'll never end.
She's plotting her own debut. I haven't asked if she's got an avatar. I haven't asked what her name's going to be. I don't want to know. I'm just worried. And if a very mature lady VTuber starts taking over the world, then I apologize to you all, because goodness gracious me, what's coming? Lord help us all.
I'll book as a passport trip to China. Don't worry about it. Well, not China, sorry. We'll go to Chile. We'll be fine there.
China is far too interested in VTubing. Good God, we'd have no escape there. It's far too popular.
Yeah, let's go to Chile instead.
Oh, good Lord. Yeah. That is a scary potential.
Yeah.
So that's Azur Lane. And then we got Speaker for Night. I guess that's Runehon's designation this evening. Question 232. If the British got a Kamov K-27 Helix and a K-31 Helix E, do they hand them over to the USA or evaluate them, and what do you think the Brits would like and not like, man?
The Kamovs. I love the Kamovs.
I'm just going to state this now.
Boys.
I'm going to state this now. Officially, the British never got them. But we are also talking about a nation which quite literally drove a tank out of Poland onto the beach, onto a landing craft, and took it onto an LPD to get it away after having bought it. So, this was during the height of the Cold War. When I say that the British... officially, as I understand it, never got hold of them. The fact that you can find some if you go and look in certain areas of the certain historic aircraft museums in the UK will leave to one side, or at least sections of them. But I think they quite like them, and always, as a rule, the British they tend to evaluate it themselves. They don't hand it over to the Yanks, and the Yanks basically go, "Yeah, here, thanks, we'll take your notes," or they come and look at it with us. But we've got enough facilities. There are different nations have different sets of facilities, but the British facilities are fairly good for evaluating, so it's fine.
If we poke it enough and it doesn't explode, it must be good.
Yes, plus the British have access to spaces and different rules around press photography, etc., which are helpful sometimes to keep things under the wraps. Channel Lord, slight correction to the question. Warships are World War I to World War II, not just World War II ships today. Sorry for the poor wording. Oh, so it's 3 capital ships for each of the nations. Well, for Germany, that means I have to save Seydlitz, because let's be honest, poor Seydlitz, the fact that she needs to be around as a pub museum to her crew who kept her afloat. Because it was very nearly, the Germans very nearly lost the battlecruiser of Jutland.
If it's capital ships that are still floating during World War I,
or II,
belonging to the major navies, no, World War I and World War II,
Slava?
and they were capital ships during their career, I'm pulling the battered hulk of Hoche forwards. And you can't stop me.
Chandler, I hope you do not mind, but we are ending the question there, because frankly this could get very weird very quickly. Because I just remember there's also certain Spanish ships still around, and he's forgotten that at the moment. Okay,
well, they're not
1981.
major navy, so I can't use them.
Spain was a major navy in World War I.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's right, I can bring you
No, you forgot it. You moved on. We moved on. We're on to the next question. Question 232.
Right. Back in a second.
If the British got them, do they? We've answered that one. They deal with it. Thank you. Steve, thank you. You're putting in the funding we've got so far. We've had 69, 89 Canadian, 69 US, and £30, and there's a few others coming as well. Thank you. Thank you everyone who's donating money towards the Kallaxes, because the main thing is I need to get the Kallaxes so I can unload the boxes of books, because otherwise you have open boxes of books, and I've already got 8 boxes open, and that's about the limit, I think, space-wise. And there is a certain fluff, who I will not name names at all, who might be down about there, who is complaining quite mightily that his floor space has been taken up by book boxes. KVG. What is Dr. Clarke's personal opinion about the Kamov coaxial halos in their role? They were, for they were actually fairly decent in some regards. Going for the coaxial approach provided a lot of stability, but also provided some downforce issues, especially on the water, which did cause them some unique pinging sonar issues for their dipping sonar. But honestly, it was something they'd worked out after about 20 years. Because it started off and they were going, well, you know, there were certain scenarios where they were okay, well, hang on, why is our sonar not working as well? And it was literally found to be because of the pressure coming from the coaxial blades and how you deployed it and the way the pressure affected. Because it's not just the total force, it's also the way the pressure works. Because you have to remember, a lot of the sonar and a lot of the sonar tech was designed on all helicopters being all the same. And the Soviet helicopters, of course, weren't the same. But it's, especially once they got sonar boys, things got better. You sound incredibly excited, Fleet. Why?
I'm fine. Honestly, genuinely, I'm.
There was a lot of deep breathing going there, which is worrying me.
I just
then we have.
hysteric.
Okay, were the Type 41 Leopard and Type 61 Salisbury class frigates intended to fill the role of the old World War II convoy escorts, or were they intended for something else? They are basically convoy escorts plus, in that they're the sort of escorts which you have for convoys which are going into the Arctic and space like that, i.e. high fret convoys rather than low fret convoys.
For those of us unfamiliar with modern shipping, can we get a brief rundown?
Twin four,
because I don't know.
Basically, some twin 4.5-inch guns. Usually, just a couple of pairs. Just one twin 4-inch. Basically, they're the things which generically lead up to the Leander class, and you just see a whole series of them. They have some really interesting bridge designs, and are really quite cool to look at from that perspective.
Were one of these ships by chance starring in a drama series in the 70s by any chance?
Yeah.
Because if so, that will... Yeah, that I know exactly what we're talking about then.
They're nice ships.
Series, by the way, warships.
They are nice ships. I was really annoyed when the one on the Type 23 frigate was cut so short. Especially after they had such a pratty start. But it did look quite good. Dragon, question for Q. Is there a source onto the French Navy's recovery after World War II? Do I have seem to conflict with each other? Again, I have a good one. It's called The Rebirth of the French Navy, but it's in my box somewhere. Let me see if I can look it up and find out if there is a version in English. And if it has the same title in that. Because that's a friend of mine who's a French naval professor gave me that book, gave me his own translation of it, and it has the title of The Rebirth of the French Navy. No, it's not that one. But you know how it is when a friend translates a whole book for you and then gives it a title and gives it to you. You sit there and go, is this the same title as it's published under this book?
Ooh, that's a conundrum? Pickle?
Yeah.
That sort of thing?
One of the things I found really interesting now is that at least two of the delivery drivers of the Amazon delivery drivers now know my name and know me by sight because they've already had to deliver so many boxes to me. But mostly it hasn't been books yet. They do realise books are coming.
Oh, good Lord.
Mostly it's been things like, yes, you've moved into a new house. Great. The previous owners, what they seem to have done is they seem to have taken the doors off the walls so they could extract everything, and when they put the doors back in their frames, they only put in half the screws. Yep.
Some people just need to not touch houses at all. Please cease.
They had a bright idea. No, I can't find the book in English, and so I have no idea. I'll ask my friend what it is. Perhaps there is a version in English coming. I do love that someone's just written as a quote underneath the unrotated projectile. The unrotated projectile could have been good if the rockets were stabilized somehow and fitted with varied VT fuses, and that's literally what the land battery was. Literally, that's the Z battery. We'll leave that to one side.
I cast sky removal.
What if the extra what if the extra 3R class battleships have been turned into the Renown class have been turned into Renown class and purposely designed as battlecruisers, say around 35,000 ton standard, 4 twin 15-inch, 42-inch, 9 to 11-inch belt armor, minimum 20 knots? Could they have been ready for Jutland? And if so, what's the impact? Well, they could have been ready for Jutland because Britain has the industrial capacity to have them ready for Jutland. What's the impact if they have them? Is that changes Jutland quite dramatically because suddenly BT has a lot more firepower with them. And what's the impact on the Anglo-American naval race? The Americans are going to be rushing to get the Lexington class in service. But also, that could also change certain things which come afterwards, because it could mean that instead of going with the Admiral class battle cruisers, as in economic warfare cruisers, they might actually do a fast battleship design for the admirals, because you have to remember, the British are the one people in this period who do actually have a codified doctrine for what a fast battleship should be. And the British doctrine for what a fast battleship should be is it has to be able to maintain contact with the cruiser line, which is why it has to be able to do 28 knots, at least 28 knots. Battle cruisers are going faster and faster and faster, because they have to have a full spread of cruiser speed. They have to be able to maintain contact with the front. They have to be able to lead the cruiser line, which is the thing, the phraseology. The fast battleships have to be able to maintain contact with the cruiser line, so that's why I need a top speed of 28 knots. Or 20 knots at least, and that's why battlecruisers have to be able to lead the cruiser line, which is why their speed keeps going up to 30, 33 knots, etc., and all that high. So that there are doctrines and there are definitions going around.
The problem that you've got with these 3 ships extant is that when it comes to the Washington Naval Treaty, this is where it gets interesting.
Well, here's the interesting thing, because if you've got 3 of them, you might, and they've done well at Jutland, and they've changed the Battle of Jutland to probably being at least probably just the mauling of the first scouting group and a withdrawal by the Germans.
Do we even see a treaty at all?
Well, that's the interesting thing. It might change things a bit that much, but also, if you do have a post-World War I treaty scenario coming on, the thing is, what have the British built instead of the Admiral class, and how big an impact does that have? Because
anything,
well,
that's
they
the thing.
They will have built something.
Anything.
You have to remember they're not building the Admiral class for World War One. You have to remember the Royal Navy always does this. At the end of wars, they stick in and try and build some ships quickly because they know that immediately the war's over, they're going to face a building freeze. They know they're going to get a building freeze. They always presume the governments are going to cut them down, so they always try and build some big assets quickly. That's what the Hawkins class decision and all sorts of things are things they are chucking in, which they don't need for World War One. The Admiral class were never going to be completed in time for World War One. And the Admiralty knew it. Their predictions of how long until Germany starved to death were all worked out. They knew the Admiral class were never going to be finished in time, but he still built them. Why? Because they're for the post-war scenario. They're for the next war.
Well, in that case, what on earth takes their place then?
Possibly some fast battleships, in which case any Jutland experience is going to accelerate them rather than cause the whole debate in turning battle cruisers economic warfare, trying to turn them into a battle cruiser, single word, for dealing with other fast ships. Thank you, Straphanger. I think that's pronounced. Thank you for the bookshelves support. What if the Iron Duke had been repaired and preserved as a museum ship? I would be very happy, and Drac would probably be trying to persuade Mrs. Drac, aka the Friendly Sea Mine, that they should live aboard it.
Oh boy. No, Drac, you cannot make off with Iron Duke. I will not stoke the boilers for you.
You know you would if you asked. Henk, if the town class...
I most certainly would not.
Hank,
I've been
if the
inside of a firebox.
if the town class cruisers have been built a little later and been built with 12 5.25 inch guns, how much better or worse would they have been? Are you talking about
So much worse.
No, no. The question is: are we talking about the town class cruisers from prior to World War One, or the town class cruisers from prior to World War Two?
I would assume that given he's talking
Because
about
there's a 5.25
inch
Yes,
gun,
but there's also a 5.25 inch gun going around from Vickers prior to World War One.
yes.
You
But
have
if
to
it's the
specify:
World War-
is it town class 1936 or 1910? Just put it in the live chat on the YouTube, and we'll spot it, Hank. And we'll get on to Michael 66. Someone says, I can supply the plans and funds. Pick one warship, any nation, any time period, and we'll have a replica ship built for historical purposes. What ship do you pick and why? This is me talking, so it's going to be HMS Nubian. Why? Because I really want a Tribe-class destroyer.
Well, if it's me talking, then I basically have 3 options, and I just basically have to spin a wheel and decide which one it is. I either want an Hispania, the Marine Nacional Barbette Ironclad Hoche, or I want the Spanish battleship Pelayo. And I have to spin a wheel and decide which one I want.
I will accept 2 out of 3 of those as options.
Luckily, it's
Thank you,
up
Sir
to
Hanger. Thank you. So you got the
I'll probably go with the Hispanias, because
Henrik
I just love the mini
Burford,
dreadnought.
36. Sorry, Doc. Hank, yes, right. So it's 36. So it's a 1936 one. Then yes, they definitely wouldn't be as
Worse.
good. It would be worse.
The whole point of the
But
towns
that
is to
would
be
mean
the
also
new
the
fleet.
the 5.25 would mean that would be coming into service a lot earlier. The 5.25.
And it would also probably allow for the kinks to be worked out.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the 5.25, as Drac and Dr. Clarke and myself now have said a few times, it's not a bad gun for cruiser engagements given its long barrel length and high muzzle velocity. It's not quite a 6-inch gun, but it's not a bad weapon for service engagements given the lack of armor on opposing light cruisers. Where it will struggle is in the role that the RN sees its 6-inch cruisers doing during any war, which is basically being asked to stand and fight 8-inch cruisers and come away as a victor.
The interesting thing is, if you did get a triple mount, I think it'd be a good gun for vessels like the Air Fusers to have. And I
completely.
think it would be a good gun for, but also triple mount's not going to be good for dual purpose for AA as well. Because let's be honest, a triple turret for AA is going to be a nightmare.
I mean, you can do it. It's gonna suck, but you can do it.
It's not really something that really works practically until you get auto loaders worked out, and that's even then they go dual for 6-inch guns and those sort of generations. So yeah, that's the problem. It's not. It's gonna be. You're putting in a single focus mount the moment you're going for a treble mount, and it's not a single. It's a gun which works best when you're evaluating as a dual purpose weapon rather than a single focus weapon. Because for anti-ship, the 6 inches, not much more, but a lot better. In terms of weight and the costs. Hank, how much percentage of reserve buoyancy do battle cruisers and battleships usually have? The usual criteria is that the armoured citadel, as long as it's intact, must have enough buoyancy, provide enough buoyancy to keep the vessel afloat. That's the usual requirement. I did once read someone saying that some nations were trying to design it so that as long as half the citadel was intact, they would stay afloat. But I don't think that ever actually happened, because the sheer amount of subdivision and the sheer size of citadels you would be dealing with would actually be prohibitive.
Dr. Clarke, the next question by Blackburn Maximus. Can I read that, please? Because I have a
Yes.
qualifier I wish to add after it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Question 4. What if the Royal Navy built today 4 25,000-ton plus standard nuclear cruisers with 3x twin auto-loading 9.2-inch guns, reusing the designs of the 8.5-inch 18-inch 55 Mark 71 with 6 twin Otto Malera 76 3 aside? What else would you arm them with? Well, first of all, I'm marching down to Admiralty House, bursting through the doors, grabbing the idiot that authorized gun cruisers in the modern era and beating them to within an inch of their life for wasting naval procurement money.
Actually,
Secondly, I'm dragging those cruisers into the yard, ripping out their 9.2-inch guns and putting VLS in.
honestly, though, on 25,000 tons with only 6 9.2-inch guns, you could probably still take about 256 VLS and some hypersonics.
I would also point out, though, it would take 25 years to build them, given you'd have to stand up the ability to build those 9.2-inch guns.
We could actually
It's not
9.2-inch
within the
guns. There is a manufacturer we could go to. That's not impossible.
It's still too much gun, though.
In the nicest way, Fleet, both of us exist, and the Swedes are prepared.
No, what I mean is, it's too much gun to put on a ship generally in the modern era.
I would say you could probably get away with 4, but if you're going to have 6, 3 twins, that's actually quite useful, because honestly, those ships are, in terms of bombardment, in terms of range, the 9.2-inch gun, you probably get out of it with modern 9.2-inch guns and modern length barrels. You'd probably be talking about a huge amount of damage they could sustain, and they could inflict on power. So it would be a very useful vessel for powers of a certain size, because it's either going to be your escort leader for your carrier battle group, or it's going to be a surface action leader, or it's going to be a solo ship out scaring the bejesus out of people as your, let's say, your Far East flagship.
I'm just sat here crying in the corner because the same one we could have probably.
Yes, but also think about it from this perspective. If you've got 6 guns, that means you have 4 forward, which will be completely fine on display when you're in a meeting. And when you're having a party, you'll have the helicopter deck is probably going to be above and in front of the aft turret, because otherwise it's not going to work. So that's going to be the flight deck as that coming up there. So you're going to have space after the gun as well. So you basically can have a 2-tier party where the guest can either sit there looking down at 9.2-inch guns whilst looking at the hangar and all the helicopters you brought with you and all the VLS, or they will be on the level where they're staring face to face with the 9.2-inch guns.
I would also point out one thing you told me.
It's a very useful diplomatical.
I never thought I'd be the one playing devil's advocate against armed ships, given all the nonsense I've come up with for my own adventures. But here we are. What about the shock of the guns firing?
Well, that's the thing.
On electronics and missiles.
Actually, the thing, that's where 9.2 inch is quite good, because that's just big enough you can do it, but not so big that it's not going to... You can't deal with it and stop it causing too much shock, and you can't deal with the recoil inside the turret. I'd also say that with the modern VLS packages, especially, etc., the missiles, once they're in the VLS, are fine. Once they launch, they're fine. The trouble with missiles, etc., and the point they're most dangerous is when you're loading them into the VLS. That is where the most attrition of missiles takes place. The most dangerous point for a missile in the whole process of it going from being produced by the factory, being used, is when it's being delivered and lowered into the VLS.
Really?
Yeah. If you want fun, check out the US Navy's official stats on it. They actually lose a number of missiles that way.
Oh my.
It's not, when you consider the thousands they're dealing with per year of missile movements, it's not a lot, but it's still an actual number.
That's terrifying.
Hmm.
But, okay, you could apparently do this.
Yes.
As much as it makes Fleet want to throw people off the side of buildings, but yes, you could do it. I mean,
okay.
I presume, Dr. Clarke, you'd still have questions for whether Royal Navy Procurement Office decided to build 4 nuclear cruisers rather than 2 nuclear carriers, but...
I would want to have a conversation with them along the lines of, so now we've built 4 cruisers, are we building enough to build some aircraft carriers here to back up the Queen Elizabeth class? I want them nuclear modded. The nice way, they're all electric powered, so you can easily modify them to be nuclear powered. Just add in the middle section. And whilst we're doing that, let's build 2 more.
Yeah, I'd be leaning over your shoulder with a sharp sledgehammer going, this is not negotiable.
Yeah.
You have already messed up. Now is your chance to correct your mistake. Do not disappoint me.
Please note, if anyone's wondering what was happening, I was taking care of business, aka a fly, which was being annoying.
All right. After that interesting question, well, after you, Dr. Clarke.
Okay, it's USS Alaska versus HMS Dreadnought. Calm seas, clear skies, little no wind,
Oh,
middle of the day.
you've missed two. You've missed two.
Oh, good lord, I have missed two. I do apologise. I've done the rune on one. Okay, 9681. Question 230. Would it be wrong to think any Blackburn skewer successor would have watertight compartments, improving zap flaps along with the skewer diving site? Improve zap flaps. I'm not sure about the watertight compartments. I don't think you're getting those aboard aircraft at that point. But they might attempt to make some waterproof ones, but not watertight ones. And improve... There's a tail moving mysteriously behind me. As for improved zap flats and along with the skewer diving, it's like, yeah, of course you would. If you're going to produce a successor, you could try and make it better than its predecessor. And why were the Brits considering both the 1,620 horsepower Rolls-Royce Merlin 22 inline piston engines and the 1650 Bristol Hercules 6 radial piston engines for the Alvaro York? Because it depended on which one was more available, i.e. which one wasn't in demand for other things and which one was being produced in enough quantities. And reliability, etc. and things on those. Alaska versus HMS Dreadnought. Alaska wins that fight in a calm sea skirt. Doesn't matter what it is, honestly. Alaska has radar-controlled fire control. The Dreadnought doesn't. The rate of fire... Her guns are better. In a nice way. It's just not fair.
Honestly, at certain range brackets, Dreadnought may not even be able to penetrate Alaska's belt.
At certain range brackets, Dreadnought isn't even firing back because she can't hope to hit her. And then there's the speed differential, and combine it all, and no, Alaska just runs that day.
Even if Dreadnought suffers a lucky hit, even if Alaska gets a lucky hit from Dreadnought, which damages her engines, the difference in speed is so great that even with an engine casualty, Alaska can just go bye and motor away at only 24 knots rather than 32. That's how it's.
Now let's see. We've got San Giorgio. Question 228. A San Giorgio class armored cruiser served with the Royal Navy. As one, if the Italians built the ones they got and one gets built for the Royal Navy as a gift to build alliance with the British, where would the Royal Navy use a San Giorgio class? Far East, probably.
They're the. Let's have a look. Let me just have a look quickly.
They're a fairly decent Mediterranean sort of one. They've served all over the place. I think one served the Japanese as well.
They're the. They're the very nice. Oh no, they're the nice last of the Italian armoured cruisers. Those are very nice.
I'd say Far East is where the British would put it for the Far East Squadron, because that's where they usually put odds and sods.
Honestly, if a San Giorgio is in the Far East, you've got two 10-inch, 4 7.5-inch, 18 3-inch. You're talking about one of the finest last generation armoured cruisers that was built. You're talking about a ship that, if it's not fighting Blucher or Black Prince, is going to win that fight.
Yeah.
If she's in the Far East, Von
Spee has increased reason to run. Yeah, admittedly, his main reason to run is HMAS Australia, but you know, this one is added reason to run.
The thing is, if she stays in the region, the thing is, everyone forgets that the San Marcos were built to attain a speed of 23 knots. Now, it's not battle cruiser speed, but it's a damn sight quicker than most of the previous generation of armoured cruisers.
Yeah. And the thing is, the British usually do put the one-offs in the Far East. That's usually where if they're one-offs that actually work, they go to the Far East. Because you want squadrons for the Mediterranean, you want squadrons for the home fleet. The Indian Ocean usually acts as basically first reserve for the Med in the East. You know, it's usually the Far East. That's where Warsprite was, you know, flagship and all sorts of things. I'm of course talking about an earlier Warsprite, not the World War II, World War I Warsprite.
Yeah.
Typical gunnery officer. Which modern naval gun that is above 100mm that has the best rate of fire and most reliable? Above 4-inch.
It's the 5-inch.
Yeah.
It's the 5-inch. 5-inch is. It's the reason why it's been a. The reason why that bracket has been adopted. The Russians have settled on a 130, but again, that's 5.1 inch. Again, most navies are
Big stretch for the big fluff gun.
It's the 5-inch gun.
Yeah.
In fact, I think I answered this question from you in a ramblings 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
Typical gunnery officer.
Possibly did, but you know, people like to ask us all the question, see where if we have difference. There is. Someone is looking at me. I think I'm going to let you carry on with the questions for a second while I take someone for a wander, because I think he's looking at me with the eyes of, I need to go and relieve myself. And I will have to remind everyone, I can do this till about 10 o'clock, and then I will probably mentally and physically shut down. So, so we've got we've got a little over an hour to get through the rest of the questions.
All right, Fleet will try his best. From Derp Squad, Sharadane, I've seen your question. I'm going to leave it till the clock gets back because I'm not confident answering that one. But I'll park that and we'll get back to it. Derp Squad, question: if an Alaska was sold to the Republic of China, would the guns be removed and put into firing positions built into the mountainsides like the 203mm guns have? Well, the 203s that are in firing positions are Black Dragon 8-inch howitzers. They're land-based artillery. They haven't come off ships. It's unlikely that if the Republic of China has managed to grab at Alaska, they'd squander their most powerful asset by removing its guns. And Alaska is an asset that the Republic of China can use to basically shut down any attempt to invade it navally. It makes no sense for them to oh my goodness. But yeah, obviously I'll let Dr. Clarke go over that when he returns, but as far as I'm concerned, I don't think the Chinese would remove the guns of their most powerful and useful asset. Hank asks, could the Go P60AR, the pros version of the Hohenjager, be fitted with a single Walther HWK 508B rocket engine, have made a good carrier plane using the rocket for takeoff? No. First of all, it's an early jet, made by the Germans in World War II, which is prone to setting fire to it when you accelerate it rapidly, because they traded stability and power in their engines.
You chose to take that road,
but it meant that you couldn't actually make them. Their engines were not responsive. Secondly, you're talking about putting a rocket-powered flying wing. Sorry, a rocket-supplemented, jet-powered flying wing onto an aircraft carrier. The wings are made of wood. I can't think of a worse aircraft for carrier operation.
That sounds like a good way to lose an aircraft, actually, and lose a lot of pilots.
Just the jet-engined version was bad enough, but now you want to strap a rocket to it? Just for reference, Dr. Clarke, he wants to put this thing... I'll just send you it directly. He wants to put this thing on a carrier, and then he wants to add a rocket engine to it to fire it off said carrier.
I think there are better ways to kill a load of people.
My sentiments exactly. I'm glad you're back, because now we can backtrack for a second.
Sheridan's question. You mentioned in the recent past, one of the best things for the fleet era would have been placing an order for 1,000 engines, approximately 37 or 38. Were contracts flexible then back then? Or to say 300 Perseus and have options for the next 700? Could have been Hercules or Centaurus. I I don't think I've said about an order approximately 1,000 engines, but one of the things the Royal Navy, the Fleet Air Arm does, is they order engines almost immediately. They take over them, and they order development of the 2,000 horsepower engines. The trouble is the Air Ministry and the Combined Engine Authority basically gazumps the Fleet Air Arm's orders. So despite Henderson, the moment the Inskip Award goes through, going ahead and basically ordering the development of the 2,000 horsepower engines, because the Air Ministry didn't see the need for them, because the 1,000 horsepower engines were enough for their bombers, for their heavy ones. It wasn't against their own fighter command's recommendations. Please note this. This is one of those interesting things that people go, so, you know, when you talk about this, you're setting up against the RAF and you're setting Navy against the RAF. No. It's the rest of the armed forces versus the particular faction of the heavy bomber mafia who seem to have taken over the Air Ministry from about 1935 till about 1940. It's that particular group. And there are all sorts of people fighting them in the Air Ministry, in the Fighter Command, in the Fleet Air Arm, the Navy, everyone. Because they make some really short-sighted decisions. But what the Royal Navy really need to do was set up some sort of factory supply source, which wasn't inside the UK. They need to set up another factory production line. They really needed to pay Bristol or Rolls-Royce, probably Bristol, because they are better at mass manufacture than Rolls-Royce. Rolls-Royce are an interesting organisation when it comes to mass manufacture. And pay them to set up a factory somewhere in probably Ceylon at the time, or Sri Lanka as we call it, as it's called today, but Ceylon, and have it start producing engines somewhere in the Indian Ocean that can easily be supplied with materials, but also can easily be used to supply the Far East of the Mediterranean. And that means it needs to be, broadly speaking, in the middle of the trade lanes. And you probably don't want it on the Indian continent, because you probably want to have slightly more control over it. And if it's on the Indian continent, then the British, how do I put this? The governing structures of India will get involved, and they again are weird and slightly mercurial at this point, and obsessed with the army as their unique selling point to the rest of the British Empire. So might actually not support or actively interfere with you setting up such a factory.
That's about right.
Right. But also they could say, we want 1,000 proven engines. They could do a contract of that style. The trouble with Dave Harrison with putting a Bristol facility in Australia is you then have to supply it in Australia. And for supplying forces operating in the Mediterranean, Australia is quite literally the other side of the Indian Ocean. And to get most of the resources you need for that facility, let's be honest, most of the raw materials for that facility are not going to come from... some might come from Australia at the time, but some are going to come from Africa, etc. This is why Sri Lanka, Ceylon also works. And also, you're going to want to set up somewhere where the Royal Navy can ensure absolute control. And John Curtin is lovely, but he's not someone who the Royal Navy trusts for having absolute control of anything, because he's very focused on Australia. Which is the right thing. It's his job to be. So basically, Australia is a little bit too distant, and a little bit... It's one of those things of, it's a good way of protecting Australia, but also a way of Britain saying, look what we're doing to protect you, Australia. We're setting up this factory in Sri Lanka, in Ceylon, that will supply our forces in this area. But you also then need almost aircraft manufacturer as well, and at that point, basically, you end up with a scenario where the Royal Navy, the Fleet Air Arm will have Bristol-powered aircraft no matter what. Everything will be Bristol-powered. So you'll have to come up with some sort of radial engines which are 1,000 plus horsepower, or more. They'll have to be developed and earlier, and everything will be Bristol-powered. All the fighters, everything. That could be an interesting scenario, because it would mean that the RAF would be focusing on Merlin production, Bristol production would go to the Fleet Air Arm, and so you'd end up with almost a division of resources. and with the Bristol having this factory in the Middle East, sort of the Far East, that would mean that the fleet in the Mediterranean and the force in the Far East would always have those supplies. But it could cause fun. Dr. Clarke, have you read Just Stand Me Now by Jill Berup? If so, what do you think?
You missed one.
I'm just skipping that one quickly because I have read it quickly, but I haven't read it properly.
I love Jill Berup.
Jill Berup's very
Jill
funny,
Berup.
and
She's amazing. Like genuinely,
it's very
really
funny.
good.
It's very good, and it was quite cool. It was quite cool to read. I want to read it again before I start giving a recommendation of it. But it is quite good. It's quite funny at parts, and it's going to sound strange. Unfortunately, I read it when I was really not well, so I don't want to give a glowing praise of it because my memory of it's kind of foggy. But I also don't want to sound bad because my memory of it was very good at the time. So it's one of those things I want to read when I'm better properly. You know, it's one of those things. I love Australia, but if you stick anything there production-wise, it's not going to be useful for supplying anywhere else. And that's the main problem. That's the main problem. You soon find out in Hearts of Iron 4. If you use Australia as your, I usually play as Australia. I quite enjoy playing as Australia, but my main advantage is I'm friggin' far from everyone else, and so I just build myself up and ignore everyone else.
I need to drag you into a game with the Dry Dock boys at some point. Like,
I'm still having fun controlling the land armies because my land armies, I'm not sure if it was my version of Holy 4, are really annoying and really stupid. My navies are doing fine, but my armies keep killing themselves. I can
you through the kinks.
I'm literally did a campaign as the Italians, as fascist Italy, and I had something like 90 divisions involved in my invasion of Africa, and it was against 12 divisions. And at one point, my 90 divisions were losing. And they were not badly equipped divisions. They were about a third of them were armoured divisions. They had good logistics. I'd bought blooming decent tanks. I'd built up the supplies. They were a third armoured divisions. They were a third decent infantry divisions and a third cavalry divisions, which were my things for motorised infantry. By that point,
I think you, me, and Dragon need to have a game where we co-op as a nation and we just run through what's happening. Because I feel like I need to see what you're seeing to actually understand what's going on. Because there's clearly problems, but they're the sort of problems that it's hoy. Unless you actually see the problem for yourself, I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
That's in a nutshell. Anyway, moving swiftly on.
Question 227. How do the San Giorgio class armor cruisers compare to the RN armor cruisers overall? Fairly good.
I've been waiting for this one. Basically, unless it's Warrior or Minotaur, they win a one-on-one action. If it's not Warrior or Minotaur, they win a one-on-one action against any Royal Navy armored or first-class protected cruiser.
But mostly they lose in 2-on, 3-on fights. Unless the British bring their armored cruisers, which are only armed for short-range fighting, which is one of the armored cruisers they bring to the Battle of the Falkland Islands, not Falkland Islands, not San Carlos, Brain Engage.
Oh, the one where they're on the other side of South America. That one, where Canopus didn't show up.
Yeah.
We both know what we're talking. Hang on. I'll go and find it. Hang on. I'll go and find it. I'll. Give me a second. Oh, come on, Fleet. Use your brain.
Coronel.
No, that's. Oh, I just found. Yeah, there we go.
Okay. Thank you, Renan. Question. How long do you think it will take the USN to make nuclear-powered helicarriers? I don't think they're ever going to get there. I think by the time you have the technology for a helicarrier, you're going to have space-based carriers, and let's be honest, that gives you far better high ground.
James, if you're talking about helicarriers in the terms of the landing ships, the LPDs, the landing ship docks that carry, you know the one, so the LHDs, the landing helicopter decks. If you're talking about nuclear-powered versions of them, that will also never happen because the viability makes no sense.
Basically, you don't want a nuclear-powered nuclear-powered LHD because you're taking it too close into the shore, and that means you're basically taking a nuclear bomb in the middle of your formation with a load of several thousand US Marines around it into close into enemy shore.
Well,
and you might say it's not that close into shore, but let's be honest, it's within 100. It will be within 100 to 200 miles, whereas most of the carriers can operate plus 200 miles from shore and be causing mayhem.
Nuclear reactors aren't nuclear bombs, they can melt down, but it's very unlikely you'll get a nuclear explosion, but I get what you mean.
If you pour enough high explosive into that scenario, you will get something going wrong.
Yes, I agree. But what I will say is there's also another factor. An LHD can go anywhere in the world and use any port in the world. It's important to bear in mind that while nuclear carriers can visit most ports on the planet, there are some ports and nations that will refuse to service nuclear-driven vessels.
Yeah, actually, it's worse than that. They can't visit most ports on the planet. There are lots of ports which they can't visit for infrastructure reasons, let alone the nuclear access one. Because he was also, even if you say we don't exclude a nuclear ship coming in, there are only certain ports which can actually physically accommodate them. It's like in the UK. UK doesn't exclude nuclear ports, nuclear systems, because of course we have our own nuclear submarines and things. But you try and take you take a nuclear carrier into nuclear powered carrier into Falmouth and Foul Bay, they can't support you there. You're not going into port. You're merely sitting off the coast. You're not going into port. Whereas an LHD gas powered could go in. There are other facilities they could deal with it.
I mean, I think the US is sticking with fuel oil and steam boilers for their LHDs, aren't they? Because they like the high-speed cruising it gives them. I didn't think they were switching over to gas turbine with the next generation. I thought they were sticking with fuel oil.
Memory.
I can't say for certain on that front.
They have gas turbines in the America class.
Let me have a look.
And I'm fairly sure the Wasp class had geared steam turbines and gas turbines on the American island.
You are right.
And the American class have gone gas.
No, that's a shame. It's a shame to see the last large ships that use steam turbines bow out of the US. Well, oil-fired, as in boilers burning steam turbines. I know the carriers still use steam turbines.
Yeah, but it's one of those scenarios whereby look at the capabilities of the two. The Wasp with its power versus the gas turbined America class, and you suddenly realise, okay, yes, it makes sense. Going fully electric does help. Helps also in survivability.
I know.
And
look,
again, thank you to everyone
in all its forms.
Yeah, okay, and thank you to everyone who's happily funding the Kallax procurement, because those Kallaxes are really needed, according to someone who keeps pouring my back at the precise moment. I'm not sure if they're reminding me or if they're beseeching me, because they're finding it quite. Their rug has to be positioned over that way, and it isn't fully rolled out, so they aren't able to stretch out completely because there are so many boxes of books around them. I'm not saying that I have a poodle which complains the whole time. Ow! I'm just saying there's one who can poke his paw into my back right now.
You literally say that and he jabs you in the back.
Yes.
You couldn't have made timing up better than that, Doctor.
That was quite vicious. He's looking at me as cute as anything and wagging his tail while doing it.
He's like, I'm an adorable boy. I'm like, you just punched him in the back, please. Right, I'll be back in just a tick.
Okay.
Keep going. But don't do the poor taste in ship design until I get back.
Okay, taking into account prep time, who impersonates King George V the best? Centurion or Graf Spee? I think Centurion. Graf Spee really doesn't do it quite that well. Okay. Night Secretary from, would it be accurate that if the Captain Romani class light cruiser was causing trouble, the British and French sent a light cruiser to put the Captain Romani... What's he up to now? Okay, now you've just gone to straight out begging, I think. Hello, come on. Happy come. You've just come to straight out, hello, everyone. Yes. You're here to ask for bookshelves? You've gone from poking me to straight out begging, or I'm just turning around time the fuck. Oh, see? There's goes the poke. Okay, come on. Do you want to come off my lap? Oh, you do. Oh, hello. Alright, out you come. Oh, fudge me. Oh, God, I've got a poodle on my lap. Let me see the questions. Hello. Yes, you're cute. You're cute. Oh. It's probably Vicky's as well. Who knows? He's not demanding at all. He's just a poodle. Would it be accurate? Okay. If it was accurate that the Captain Roman class was light cruiser because intrepid British and French send a light cruiser to put the Captain, probably, or a pack of destroyers. It's not got much armor. Let's be honest. And yeah, because honestly, it's the sheer volume of capability that can be thrown against Captain Romani class. It's a case of one for one. They're good shit. They're good little ships, but they're never going to fight one for one because the British and the French, the British especially, don't play fair. The French might play fair, but the British are never going to play fair. Yeah, you say the Flight Research Assistant is grifting for me. You say that, but it is all about the space for his rug. That is the thing he wants. He has literally sat on that rug and has stared at me. Because it's half rolled up. I kid you not. I was having my eyes, but I was being bored into all morning.
I can believe it.
Chandlord, when did the Fu acquire such a poor taste of ships aesthetically? I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Let me look. Okay, Hope. I'll give you. She's not for everybody. But you can't sit there and say the Hispanias look awful. Look at them, they're adorable. The mini dreads, they're adorable, cute things. They're not the Hispanias aren't bad aesthetically.
Look, I think I can do too much psychological damage if I just carry into this one, so yeah. Thank you,
and
Steve.
Palio is a... Oh, alright, I'll bow out before I'll quit while I'm ahead.
Yeah. Ronan, question: what tool would you most like as you settle into new housing? I will tell you what's proved most useful is my little screwdriver, because I have literally, and I have no idea where it is currently. I have literally been. Well, as you've heard, I had to put back screws into every single door, and they took off the handles as well.
Why?
I have no idea, but this is the other thing I say, because in a nice way, I wear myself out doing things like that at this precise time. You know, I will go and do that for an hour, and that's me knocked out for another hour because of the pneumonia. And it's just fun. Right. I'm not sure how far behind we are on the questions, but I think probably it's become the point at which we need to sort of end the taking new questions sort of thing in the next couple of minutes if we're going to actually make it through them. Is it too cynical to say that the 2,997 to 4,018 ton Mogador class is large destroyers and that did nothing of worth during World War II? Yeah, basically how many opportunities did they have to do stuff of worth, and what are you judging of worth? You know, you have to look at their entire careers and patrols.
I will point out that ships doing things of worth during war become more and more difficult the further into the era of steam and steel you go, because of how the naval wars develop. You don't see the naval wars that everyone's expecting.
No.
Like World War One. Like World War One was not the war everyone was
No.
World War One was not the naval war everyone was expecting. Like, they were expecting multiple clashes of the fleets. They were expecting far more activity in the Mediterranean. They were expecting the British and Germans to clash far more than they did. And in the Second World War, it's even more pronounced. The French bow out of the war before the Mogadors really have a chance to strut their stuff against the Italians like they were supposed to.
Yeah.
The Italians are left far more fuel starved than they were expected to be, having not accounted for just how much the Germans would draw down on Romanian reserves.
Yeah.
This is the thing. In order for it to be said that ships did nothing of worth, the war would have to have been the war everyone was expecting, and the naval environment would have had to have been the naval environment everyone was expecting. But that simply wasn't the case in the First or Second World War.
Yeah. And that's the reality sometimes. What would the potential impact of introducing modern combustible cartridge A certain aircraft and aircraft guns if such technology was scalable to naval guns injected during the 1920s? What would it do? It would make them a lot faster firing, a lot lighter. Thank you, Dave Harrison. Hello. What are you up to? What are you up to? It would make them a lot faster firing. It would also make ammunition lighter. And actually, the interesting thing is it could make an autoloader more practical by reducing the weights. Think about that, because an autoloader, especially 6-inch, you can make an autoloader very much more practical than an autoloader. You could have autoloading 6-inch guns. Maybe even 8, maybe even something bigger. The 14-inch autoloader might work. Or, if the British got a 14-inch or a 15-inch autoloader working in the 1930s, and that's what they upgrade their battleships to, Lord help anyone. Imagine, I don't know, the rate of fire an autoloading warspite would achieve, entirely down to the machine spirit.
Please do not mention an auto-loading battleship. I get enough questions about battleship auto-loaders on Ramblings, and about time to have to explain to people that you can't make auto-loading guns of battleship size with the technology of the period.
You could do, though. They were actually experimenting with it and working with it. It was making it practical to work under the strains of naval operations and the amount of money and weight it would cost. So it's not to say that you can't, it's can you make it practicably? And that's the question. It's practicable. It's practicality and practicableness, rather than it being impossible to do. It's one of those things which people get into. That's what's caused issues. Why is Knight 6831's questions being deleted rapidly?
I don't know.
Oh no! I think he's been told off for spamming. I'm not sure what's going on with spamming. Runon and Stafford admins are on duty, so I'll deal with anything that comes up later. But honestly, those two I usually trust them as they are the two least likely to do anything to anyone.
They know what they're doing, and I think they understand what they're at.
Yeah. Knight Security for one. Question 223. Would it be accurate to think a 15 6-inch gun at Edinburgh would have been the same issues as a restricted arc of fire like Nelson's?
I mean, if we're talking about a 15 6-inch gun, we're talking about an Edinburgh that's basically a Brooklyn. Which, the Brooklyns didn't have many issues with restricted arc of fire, did they?
That'd be fine. Remember, what they were trying for was a 16 6-inch gun, Edinburgh, so that would have been the interesting one, with the quad 6-inch turrets.
Yeah, they wanted 4 quads, didn't they? They wanted 4 quads.
Yeah, but they didn't work. The quad turrets are just a nightmare.
That doesn't surprise me in any way.
Leslie, how different would the Narod be if you could replace the 16-inch with a 15-inch Cal 50? Ooh.
I mean, it depends. If they're like that from the start, you might be able to get a much more workable turret.
Yes, you're gonna have more. You're gonna have more space in turret. You're gonna have more space in turrets. You're also not gonna have to design a whole new shell. So you're going to use the existing shells, which Green Boy shells are pretty darn good. You're also going to be able to the weight saving. I think would probably be enough that you could go for an F3 arrangement rather than the historical arrangement. I don't think you save enough to justify the third engine and the extra couple of boilers you need to supply it. But potentially you can work that into the arrangement with 15-inch 50s, but also the biggest advantage and the biggest change in how things different are is if you've got the 15-inch 50s working, you're going to upgrade the R's and the Queens slowly for 15-inch 50s. You're going to slowly be upgrading them. They're not changing they're not changing their shell, they're not changing their caliber, they're just upgrading them to 15-inch 50s, and the British would slowly upgrade all their ships, and that's going to have a big difference. You're probably going to find things like Hood and Renown Repulse get upgraded quite quickly early on, and then it's going to be the Queen Elizabeth class and the R's, but that's going to be a big change. That's the really big change. And you'd also, logistically, from the standpoint, let's be honest, how are you going to justify 14-inch guns for the King George V's if you've got that many 15-inch guns in service?
You basically can't. There's no...
So, you probably end up with King George V, which is 9 15-inch guns. And that's going to save a lot on logistics and a lot of infrastructure, because everything's going to be 15-inch guns as far as the British are concerned.
Runon, I've just read what you said about... I know this isn't related to the question, but I have to read this out. Runon says, Fleet, you looked at the calamari cruisers in Star Wars and said that's the peak design. I do have...
You can't argue
Go back on the channel. Look, go back on the channel to Fleet's Weekly Wednesdays. I do love the Mediator printer.
Okay, so, Chandlord, as a result of the Ruhr crisis, the Germans are integrated into the treaty system and given parity to the French and the Italians of that scenario, coupling up Monaco's restoration of French in the country. How does it affect the Reichsmarine, and how many salads could we sit with for assault with French tiers? The French will refuse to decline it. The French will refuse any treaty which gives the Germans parity with them and the Italians. They can't afford. At that point, you have destroyed France's security, because France's security was entirely based on the British will help them out, and they will accept parity with the Italians.
Like, I'm going to be honest with you.
But as I've said already, the French are already in a scenario where if they've got parity with the Italians, they can't defend their empire and the rest of the world.
Yeah, like here's the thing: if as a result of if this happens. If the Germans reintegrated into the treaty system and given parity with the French, it's simple what happens. France walks, declares war on Germany. Yeah, France walks from the treaties and escalates the Ruhr crisis into a full-scale war with Germany.
Yeah, yes.
That's what happens.
It's quite simple. That's pretty much what happens. I would say the only scenario you could get is if you get a version of the second London Naval Treaty instead of the first, as that one where everyone's just agreed to the same levels, but anyone can build as much as they like.
Although like you basically it's like, okay, we've had the building holiday to cool everything down. Now we're going to remove the limits. Like, we have the limits on what capital ships can be size, or what ships can be size wise,
and what guns you can fit on them. But we're removing how many of them. But the trouble is, the earlier you do that, that's just a nightmare for everyone else fighting the British and the Americans. Because the British and the Americans, under those circumstances, with that level of thing going on, the British will go, print. And those yards which you were busily trying to pay to close down are not going to be paid to close down.
Yeah, this is the thing. For France, Germany has to be kept battered and broken. Anything that even remotely... Heck, never mind the French. The British will go, excuse me, humps the fuck? We just spent... Sorry, frigate! The British will go, excuse me, humps the frigate.
You're getting side-eye from the poodle over that.
Sorry, yeah. We just spent the last Great War making sure Germany would never be a naval great power again, and you've just brought them into the treaties?
Mm-hmm.
And given them equality with the French? Humps the frigate, we're going in. France, we're coming in with you. We're not leaving the treaties, but we're coming in with you.
We'd probably just let the French do it and just make sure no one else got involved.
That probably works as well.
Mm. But you're now being watched by the poodle for language.
That's fair. That's fair. I do occasionally let
The-
things slip.
you have to remember,
I'll accept.
as far as this one's concerned, this entire stream and all my next few weeks of streams are entirely about raising money to fund him having the floor space he needs for his bed and his rug and all the other things he wants to have. And people have been suggesting he should have a sofa, and he agrees with that, but someone has told him they don't have the money for a sofa for him right now, which he disagrees with.
All right, Steve. I'll accept the yellow card. I'll accept it.
Okay.
But also, Architect makes a good. Also, Dr. Clarke, Architect makes a good point. The polls will jump in as well.
Yes. The polls would jump in. It'd be quite
Which
interesting.
honestly, that makes even more sense because the polls will be like, "Oh yes, we can get East Prussia," and just remove the question of a German corridor because, oh yeah, you have no East Prussia now, Germany.
Yeah. Right, so, typical gunnery officer. Are we going to see underway replenishment of VLS cells for the USN? I think lots of people are looking at how to do it, but at the moment, it's because the missiles are so fragile. I think, honestly, that's part of the reason why you would see a resurgence in guns and why you would see the 9.2-inch gun cruisers make sense. Because you can reload shells at sea a lot easier than you can VLS. The missile, it's something which they need to really work out and work on, and I think, honestly, I've seen someone working on a system where they can have a magazine and they can load the VLS from underneath, and they can send missiles into the magazine. I think that might be the working system from underneath. Because I think that's easier than trying to load them in from the top, and then you have a magazine, you load the missile, you send the missiles to the ship, they get loaded into the magazine, and the magazine sorts it all out. And you're using a system which is almost like what you have on the Queen Elizabeth class for loading up the aircraft where they have the stuff going up. But that's a while away, and that's going to require some really interesting redesign of ships to build that into them, because no ships are designed currently with that kind of the magazine and interoperability with their VLS systems at the moment.
Yep. One thing I would say is that given the worry that various nations have with missile expenditure during action, and during minor actions, I think you may see a return across the world's fleets to not so much frigates but destroyers carrying 2 guns again. One forward, one aft.
It might be a pair forward, because honestly the trouble with having the stuff aft is the helicopter flight deck. But you can do it. It's kind of like the Zumwalts had got a pair forward, and now they're replacing them with.
I mean, the Tychos manage it and still have a heli deck, so I think.
Yes, but the Tychos are a good design for making your own sailors sick. They're the only ships I know which have their CICs designed the way they are to actually maximise the effect of seasickness on the crew. Think about their CIC design. Look up pictures of it, and then imagine sitting on that during a Mid-Atlantic crossing.
Why am I getting horrible images of Bunker Hill from Red Storm Rising having her crew being sick while trying... Like, that's the reason she couldn't stop the attack on the Nimitz task group in Red Storm Rising. Her crew were all physically sick.
The Tychos are a really interesting design in so many ways. Mostly because they're a destroyer leader, which is being called a cruiser, because they were short of ships with cruiser designations against the Soviets.
Oh, the fact the US didn't get the ships that were supposed to be the cruisers to the Tychos, which were the destroyers, is honestly sad.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have seen them. But also, embarrassing fleet fact moment, I used to call the Ticonderogas the Tindercont class. Because I couldn't pronounce words.
Why don't you just call them the Tychos like everyone else does?
Because I thought they were called the Tinderconts.
Okay.
Don't know.
Black Maximus, September 1st, all the tribals are turned into 4,000-ton standard destroyers with 4 twin 5.25-inch guns, Mark II turrets, 2 quadruple torpedo launchers, and several 8-barrel pom-pom guns. How does this change things? The German Navy is going to be sunk in about a week. You give the tribals
that's about right.
You give the tribals that much firepower in that time. That's not a good thing. Also, 4,000 tons is about enough for them to have the 4 twin 5.25 actually work. And we all know Fleet's favourite pre-dread, Hosh.
No. Well, that's not quite right. Hosh is my favourite French ironclad because she's technically not the first French pre-dread. My favourite French pre-dread actually goes.
Does she come prior to HMS Dreadnought being built?
Yes, but she's an ironclad, not a pre-dreadnought.
Okay, but she is still prior to Dreadnought.
Yes, but
You're talking to someone who finds the whole pre-Dreadnought designation really, really annoying. So I tend to cause trouble for people with it. Because it's
okay. My
because
favorite.
you cannot
let
be
me
building
rephrase that.
something which is a pre-Dreadnought because you don't know Dreadnought's coming. So you're not building a pre-Dreadnought. You're building a sovereign-style battleship.
My favorite French all-steel battleship has to be the hang on, I've forgotten the name of them now. I used to know them off by heart. I honestly love the Libertés.
Okay.
And the Republiques. I consider them like both half and half of the same class because it's when the French all-steel battleships really start to catch up and perhaps exceed everyone else's.
Okay.
Like the reason I like the Republiques more than the Libertés is the Republiques are laid down at a time when everyone else is still building what we the rest of the world terms pre-dreadnought battleships, and are actually the French catching up to everyone else. The Libertés, again, same thing. It's like the Libertés and the Republiques between them basically give France a force of modern battleships.
Mm-hmm.
About 6 ships that they can use to form a modern task group. And then, of course, you've got the Dantons coming in and being... the Dantons are just amazing. But, yeah, there you go. A little bit of French fleet gushing over pre-dreadnoughts there. But moving on.
KVG, is removing missile containers from VLS is also that hazardous? No, that actually tends to be quite easy once the containers are... if the missiles have been spent, the containers are it's quite easy to remove them out. If the missiles are still in them, that is a fun job best done pier side on a very calm day. And the big Soviet-Russian launchers, they're even more fun. Those things have guidance rails and require cranes and all sorts of love. If the surviving Southampton Gloucester Town class cruisers were like Edinburgh and Edinburgh were 15 6-inch gun ships, how likely is it more of them get modernised? It's quite a bit because you could remove a turret and you suddenly have space for a lot of things. Because if you have 15 6-inch guns, you could remove the aft turrets, you still have the 9 6-inch guns forward, and you could turn the aft turrets into missile launchers. So there's some advantages to it, and you still have viable gun armament. Thank you, Steve. Questions are closed. Henk, why was Bismarck Citadel 70% of its length and most Iron Citadel length is about 55% length in World War II era?
Bismarck didn't have all or nothing.
No.
It was a distributed armor scheme battleship.
Yep.
Like, that's how far behind the Germans were. I don't think they had a single capital ship during the Second World War that had all or nothing.
They had lots of ideas. The thing about the Germans is you have to remember is they actually had the idea for all or nothing about armor scheme. They did. But one of the people who was involved in the construction didn't like it because, well, officially he didn't think it was good enough. And he was politically powerful. Unofficially, his brother was the person in charge of the factory which produced ship armor. And the distributed armor more suited his brother's factory for production of the armor than the other place which produced ship armor, apparently. That's one of the stories I was told by... I was told that story by a gentleman who was a member of the Kriegsmarine during World War II. And it was a case of... who then served post-World War II eventually in the German Navy. And yeah, I heard that story when he was chatting with my dad. They'd managed to become friends. I think I was about... must be about 25 years ago, so I doubt he's still alive. It's one of those things that now, looking back, I wish I'd done more than write some notes. And I wrote down stuff, but I wish I'd been recording it, you know what I mean? You know that scenario where you're sitting there, and it's just your dad's friends chatting, and there are a whole bunch of naval architects and naval people just chatting away, and you're sort of going, I wish I'd recorded this. And I've just written down some notes, some stuff on the side, and my dad had written some notes, and I've got them, but that's not something I can point to as a source or reference material, but yeah. I think I hear something approaching as we finish the questions off. When I say I think I hear something approaching, I think there is something approaching. That's a sister. So it's a sister checking if I'm alive.
Yeah. So we've done missile containers. Knight's put an interesting question, which is next, which is 222.
I thought it was 2. I thought we answered that one. I think we're on to 221.
Class.
We did that one.
No, we answered.
If they're more likely to get modernised. Yes.
Oh, modernised. Oh, hi. Oh, we got us. Sorry, 211. Sorry,
yeah, 221. Yeah. Would the RN Hey, Ruron's keeping everything going pretty fast. Would the RN accept a ship that visually looks cursed but has 15 6-inch guns, 16 4.4-inch guns, 24 40mm guns, and 8 12.7mm guns, and 2 triple torpedoes? Visually looks cursed.
I mean,
how can someone look cursed? I mean, what's going on to make?
You're talking about a British Brooklyn. There's nothing wrong with a British Brooklyn. Like, the Brooklyns are handsome ships.
The British just wouldn't care. If it works, then it works. In a nice way, the British will soon find a way to make it not look cursed. Jacob, when comparing top speeds and naval ships, do you adjust for the different definition of the nautical mile or not? Countries had up until somewhat in the 1970s, when all finally agreed to a single definition. Or do you just use the numbers given from the era of ships? If I can be... this is the trouble, is I have to check in the books I'm using whether they've adjusted them or whether they haven't. And if they haven't adjusted them, I try and put them through a rough calculator I have in an Excel spreadsheet. But if that, then I will tend to round them to the point at which they're just normal 2 decimals. I don't like to do 0.5s and 0.6s. So it's a case of it's accurate up to an agreed about level of accuracy. But also, as we know, Jacob, I am one of the people who regularly says, and actually I think I just said this in the Forrestal class video, that I believe the official figures for ship top speeds, like I believe that the moon is made out of cheese. In that, those are the official top figures for speed, for ship speed, in peacetime, when we're following all the rules and regulations, and we are operating the boilers and the turbines at a capacity which is going to preserve their life. That's the official top speed. The real top speed is when in wartime we forget those rules and regulations for keeping the ships, the turbines and engines alive, because keeping the ship alive comes first. And in a crisis, we forget some of the safety regulations with how much power we are prepared to put through the turbines. So yes, top speeds are a rule of thumb guidance to what this ship could potentially do. And if you believe it, that's on you. But it's like, I am fairly certain of the accounts that I've read that the Nelrods were reaching 26 knots when they were chasing people.
I didn't think it should go through the tumbler.
What is... T-shirt? Thank you. That shouldn't go probably in the dryer. Thank you, sis.
Well, the others were alright, but that one...
Yeah, that one's fine.
I really didn't want to refresh anyway, so...
Sorry, that's my sister has very kindly, mainly because when I tried to bend over and load the washing machine and the dryer, I was coughing for the next 30 minutes. She's currently washing my shirts and making sure they're clean, and she decided one should not go in the dryer because it's a nice one from World of Warships, and it's the Belfast one, and it kind of probably get ruined by it. What are you complaining about now? You want to complain again about the fact that your rug is only half width again? Is that it, or do you want more biscuits? I'm gonna go for biscuits, but there is a possibility he wants to complain again to everyone, because you have to understand he has been he literally has pulled people, including the very nice gentleman who is the handyman who comes and helps us from Cornwall Handyman Services. Very nice gent. He gave him a bear hug and started tugging and pulled him in here. He pulled him in here. And it's a case of
goodness.
You have reached sentience, or you have also reached the key point of laziness. I'm not sure which.
Go requires Rog.
Yeah.
So we have the Crown Colony question.
How accurate is to think the Crown Colony class is an environment where the town class is 1250 will be seen as more attractive?
If we bear in mind the Crown Colonies are coming in at a time where the RN is looking in the lead up to, or war has already begun.
Crown Colonies were originally designed to have 12 6-inch guns. 12 6-inch guns. That's remember.
Like, even if the towns have 15 6-inch guns, the idea of a slightly less powerful, easier and quicker to build cruiser that doesn't sacrifice that much in the way of speed or armor, and only sacrifices 3 6-inch guns is definitely going to be seen as attractive and definitely not as a step down.
But basically, the Crown Colonies are what I would call the war build towns. That's what they are. It's taking your town class design and going, what can we strip out to make them quicker to build, so we can have as many as possible in wartime.
You've basically described the situation that the US had, where they went from Brooklyn to Cleveland. You've literally just described exactly that for the RN.
Typical gunnery officer. If we see a USN angled deck carrier during World War II, are we going to see a pusher propeller aircraft on board CV? Why do we have an angled deck carrier? You need them with jet aircraft, but a coaxial... Basically, you need an angled deck carrier if you've got twin-engined aircraft, not pushers, but twin-engined aircraft. But you don't...
you also don't...
Yeah, hello.
What arrangement a carrier's deck
He really wants everyone to look at the amount of space he has for his rug, I think, because he keeps pulling me round.
Yeah, like... What arrangement a carrier's flight deck has very little bearing on what aircraft will be operated off of it in the World War II period.
Yeah, it's basically the only aircraft which I could see bringing in a angled flight deck earlier than the jets do it is going to be a twin-engined twin aircraft design if that's your common carrier aircraft, because that's going to have sufficient landing speed to justify it. Because the angled flight deck is about landing speed. That's it.
Basically, yeah.
I don't know. Okay. Question. Runon, what is the impact if the UK is 100 miles further west? If it's 100 miles further west... Oh... Well, A, it's going to be actually slightly more in the Gulf Stream. No, it's not the Gulf Stream. It's the oh, what's the hot water flow that comes up the Atlantic? Oh, brain. That's the one which brings us to warm water and gives us the fairly temperate climate we have despite our northern latitudes. I forget it now, but hey, we're going to be more into that. But also, we'd be that much further for air defense perspective in World War II. In World War One, it would be that much more difficult to put in things like the channel barrier, but it would also, it would be a bit more difficult, but it would also mean the North Sea was that much bigger, and it's not really going to change a whole lot, honestly, other than give us a slightly better air defense in terms of World War II. And also make our aircraft probably have to be built slightly longer range, which actually make them more useful for the Pacific Theatre and the Mediterranean in the first place. It is the Gulf Stream. I was right the first time. I was just thinking it can't be called the Gulf Stream because that's a jet. Yeah, it's the Gulf Stream. I was right the first time. With the angled landing deck on the shield helicarrier drops aircraft into one of the ducted lifting props. Yes, it does. That's fun. Right. Blackmasters, what is the point of an independent force? Why not just an Army Air Force and the Fleet Air Arms so they can focus on their roles? The Independent Air Force was originally justified to create a independent strategic bombing arm. That was the argument put forward for it during World War One, based on the argument there was going to be a surplus of engines, which it turned out there wasn't. It was just difference in accounting methodologies. And pretty much it's to keep air power and air-mindedness going, is the idea.
It's important to bear in mind that the role, like when we saw the advancement of aircraft moving forwards, you see a need to move away from air forces tied to the Army and the Navy.
Yeah.
Now both forces should have their own aerial components, as it turns out, as the decades would go on, an Army's air component will become rotary winged, and a Navy's component will be flown off carriers, and would also include rotary winged assets. But the duties of an Air Force are radically different from the duties of a Navy than the duties of an Army, and should therefore be separated as such. An Air Force should be interested in the business of strategic aerial warfare. Now, it should also be able to provide close air supports to the Army and support to the Navy, but its primary role should be the application of air power on a strategic level to defend its own airspace and impinge and contest the airspace of an opponent. That's why you need a separate Air Force.
That's true. That's true. I think I'm going to have to brush someone's ear in a bit, because I think he's got something in there which he shouldn't have. I just felt it. But yeah, it's pretty much there are reasons for an Air Force. There are reasons not necessarily supporting it. It depends on the size of the nation and what you've got involved and what you're supporting it with. But you know, these things always come about in this scenario. Right. Question 219. How likely is it the RAF was interested in the FN-95 remote control turret that the Royal Navy was working on? They were as interested as an academic exercise, yes, and probably had wanted their own one. How much does the Royal Navy fitting a remote controlled turret on the Spearfish tail tell us about the RN's thinking on bomber defensive guns? That's pretty much standard at that time for the Spearfish. Everyone's pretty much doing that. What's your opinion of the late Spanish Principe de Asturias? It was designed to give a lot of American naval officers a panic attack because it's the closest thing to the sea control ship that was ever built. But it's also quite fun and capable.
Yes.
For its size. The Black Pearl
I would also point out.
How long have we got to get through? Not many.
The Princesa de Azores is a very small aircraft carrier, but I will also point out that she's very close to a ship currently in service serving with the Thai Navy. She's basically what you get when you need aerial mobility for your fleet, and you want some fixed-wing assets, but you aren't looking to build an aircraft-carrying cruiser in the form of the Invincible class, like the British did. She's basically what you get when you throw out all of the frills, all of the extras, and you just focus on a ship that can carry aircraft and do very little else. However...
Oh, sorry, that laugh was not at that, by the way. I should point out, my mother has just sent a picture through to me of, I think Fleet should work with Rin Penrose when he gets his avatar.
Oh boy. However, that being said...
And she's come with a mean picture of it, which she's going to try and send to Foxo.
Yeah. However, that being said, the Prince de Azores and the Thai vessel that is her half-sister are basically the ideal, very good examples of what you can get away with when you decide you want a carrier that doesn't stretch your budget.
Yeah. I would say it basically works for Harrier-sized aircraft, not F-35-sized aircraft, because of the weight and operations. You need to scale up. I'd also add that if anyone thinks that me and Drac in any way bully or wind up Fleet of Oceans, we have nothing compared to what my mother seems to be planning to release on him, and she likes him and thinks he's adorable. Her words.
For example, like I will.
Fleet is
I'll send
gratefully
this
just
to
trying to avoid this because he doesn't want to get into this discussion. But it is true. He is
No,
getting
I
a virtual avatar. And so, yes, it could be happening.
I don't know if Dr. Clarke can show this by showing the panel, like by showing my messages to him, but just through Discord quickly.
Potentially, but there's one thing I want to
for
answer
example,
from the chat. Duke of Petchington, there is
yeah,
no scenario where I introduce you to my mother on Discord. There is absolutely no scenario. You two both produce way too many memes, and combining you two would cause me way too much trouble. Okay?
Yeah,
no,
just,
not happening.
So
Nada.
Yeah. So if Dr. Clarke will politely show the panel just my messages to him quickly, you can see side by side the Thai Navy and the Spanish Navy came to very, 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 very similar conclusions when it came to we want a ship that can operate Harriers and helicopters.
Yeah.
It's almost scary how similar the two ships actually are.
Well, that's because they both got them from the same design study. And they both come from the same place. So, yeah, it's not really scary, it's more predictable.
What's scary is the fact that is the fact that the Thai ship is still in service.
Well, it's fairly well maintained. It's fairly,
I mean,
you know...
she functions as the royal yacht more than anything else. But still.
And there's a problem with that?
No, not necessarily. But moving swiftly back to the questions so we can actually work through them.
Oh, yeah. And there we go, now we have the pictures up. So people can see. Guess which one is Spanish and which one is Thai.
I know, so I will therefore not. I will not be partaking in the guessing.
Mm-hmm.
Time for pick your ship.
If you put P for port in the chat, that's this side for me. Not sure if it's port for you, but left port for me. And starboard is S. So P is... And you have to decide which one is Thai and which... so you can put P and S and put after the P, whether this is the port one, this is the starboard one. So this is P, this is S. Which nation do you think they belong to?
It'd be interesting to see what people actually come up with.
So you put in the letter, and then you put in which nation you think it belongs to. Who do you think P belongs to? Who do you think S belongs to? People are thinking this one's the Thai one so far. No,
Yeah,
there's some people who are going
that,
Spain.
yeah.
P for Thai. P equals Thai. Right, and
Seems
do you want...
like most people think...
Right. Fleet, do you want to answer it?
Yes. So, if you're looking at the stream, so from where Dr. Clarke...
This is P,
outwards
this is
at
S.
us.
This is P, this is S.
Hang on, let the stream catch up quickly. Give me a second. Okay, right, so for those who answered P for Spanish and S for Thai, you are correct.
Mm-hmm.
The one on
Spain?
For the one on
Thailand.
Dr. Clarke's port side is Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
The one on S is the Thai ship.
Mm-hmm. Right, so let's get back to the questions. And which ones we're up to? If the British won the Battle of Cornwall, maybe it was slightly better better RN forces, would Craddock become in charge of battlecruisers?
No.
Probably not. He's not senior enough, but he could well become commander of the 3rd Squadron, battlecruiser 3rd Squadron, or he would probably get a more senior appointment. So he would probably end up being recalled to the battle fleet. And he becomes another problem in the promotion track for BT necessarily. So why can't we compare the Jutland night battle to the ones in Pacific World War II? As the first night battle of Guadalcanal has the hallmarks of the confusion at Jutland. Who says we can't compare them? We can compare them, but they are different. Very different periods in terms of technology and doctrine. And you're also comparing completely different forces involved. So you can compare them to see how many mistakes are made, but you're not really comparing apples and apples. You're comparing apples and oranges. Agreed? Fleet?
Yes. Mostly, but I do still think that one is taking basically the same thing you've said. One is apples, one is oranges. One is taking place in the era of the First World War. One is taking place in the era of the Second World War. It's not like mistakes were made in both, but I comparison I don't think is the right word.
Yeah.
I think the right word is contrast, not compare.
Yep. And let's see, PT when? I should have probably finishing at 10 o'clock, but we're going to get through these questions because there aren't that many to go. There's about 9. So PT when? Nice to hear from. In World War I, the Soviets, Norwegians, Dutch, British, and Canadians get what we as town class force stackers that they did historically at the same time as the USN get what you said. What the? I'm not sure about the question. I've lost question 2. There's a track of question 2 and 6. That might be because I'm currently being. I'll be back in a second. I think I've got to take someone for a wander. Okay, I'm coming. I will take you for your little wander.
Seeing as I have to pick up.
Fluffy!
Basically, if the
Where's your lead?
well, he says the Soviets, but then says Imperial Russians. So I assume he means if the Russians, the Norwegians, the Dutch, the British, and the Canadians got the town class force stackers that it historically, at the same time the United States Navy did, what would the British Canadians and the Imperial Russians, Norwegians, and Dutch use theirs? Simple. They're destroyers. They are powerful modern destroyers. They will be used as powerful modern destroyers. There's not really much more to say than that. The Norwegians have just been given a powerful injection of modern, fast units. So they will absolutely discard all of their destroyers and torpedo boats to retain their towns. The Dutch have been given an injection of modern destroyers. So how that affects their plans is unknown, but they'll especially long-range destroyers, they will likely serve in the Dutch East Indies. The Imperial Russians, their ships will probably languish in port for a while, and not do much else until they're handed into Soviet service, and God knows how long they last. As for the British and the Canadians, they've received modern destroyers. They will use them like modern destroyers, either serving with the Harwich Force, or with the Grand Fleet, or the Battlecruiser Fleet. Probably the Battlecruiser Fleet, given their endurance for the British, and their long legs. That's basically my situation on that. Well, this is World War One, Dr. Clarke. Sorry, this is World War One. And there was no indication this was a follow-up question. So,
You're a good boy.
I don't have the context in regards to this question,
What is it?
so I can't really comment.
Which question?
So I've just gone through 216, which is basically the question regarding the town class 4 stackers. So
You have extra destroyers. You use extra destroyers.
That's basically what I said.
Yeah.
Apparently, he said it was a follow-up to what the RN and RCN would use their 4 stackers for in Bruships 157 that you answered. But I have no context on that question, so I can't.
I
really
basically
comment.
said the Royal Navy would use them for more escorts because that's what they'd have them for. They're the good destroyers. They are in World War One. They're useful ships for actually fleet units and extra fleet units, and that's what they'd use them for if they're going to.
That's basically what I said.
If
I
they're
said
good-
the Imperial Russians would have theirs mostly sit at anchor or do patrols in the Baltic. The Norwegians and the Dutch would basically be cheering at the injection of modern large fleet destroyers into their navies for no cost.
Yeah. Question number
That's about
5. As the British would copy Supermarine Spitfire Mark V if they get it early, how much a problem does that create for Germans? If they get a Supermarine Spitfire Mark V, depends how early they get it, but let's be honest, you get those things getting the RN's getting Supermarine Seafires as well, which are based on Mark Vs at the same time, and the British could basically enter World War II with new build Seafires and new build Spitfires, all roughly the Mark V equivalent. Then it's not that just the Germans are going to have a trouble. Just think about Norway. Just think about the Mediterranean campaign. Think about what's going to happen to the various forces if you're dealing with Spitfires, replacing, or probably actually be working in tandem with Fulmars. Although if you have Seafires, you probably don't have Fulmars aboard the armoured carriers. Because you think about it, the Seafire, especially if it's a built Seafire at that time, is going to take up a lot less space than a Fulmar. And if you're new build Seafires and you get them early enough to copy it and to get it in time for wartime, they're going to be built with folding wings. Or possibly the Gullwing Spitfire actually gets built. The Gullwing Seafire. Which was basically the Spitfire body with fuselage with gull wings and the same engine, but the gull wings were designed because you could A, make them folding, and B, you could make it so that it would, because it just felled up like that, so it became pyramid fold. You could make it so that you could that they could actually survive deck landings without having the damage to their wings. It's an interesting one. But basically it just gives the Royal Navy a decent fighter from the get-go in the fleet operations, and that's going to give them an advantage in certain scenarios. It's going to give them aircraft which are far quicker accelerating, so instead of you just maybe having the cap intercepting, you might also have the alert aircraft being able to be part of the intercept, and you might be able to land and recover and return aircraft that much faster because they can gain height that much quicker. So that's going to affect how many aircraft you have doing an intercept, which is going to affect how good a job they do at breaking up the strikes coming in. And that's again what fighters are for in fleet to air defense. It's to if they take out the targets, great. If they break up the attacks, that's the big thing. So actually, you lose something when the fighters go off chasing to get their kills rather than breaking up the enemy strikes. Black Maximus, Forts of Lay's ketchup crisps. If you have not had them, when you visit Canada next time, will you try them? Probably. I'm not too much of a crisp eater. Honestly, it's one of the things I tend to have. The only time I tend to eat chips and those sort of things is actually when I'm away with shipshape, because they get served with every blooming meal. And the reason I do this is because the easiest way I've found to try and keep my weight down is to not have potato. For me, that affects me more than anything else. Only thing which does a better job of affecting me is the fact that if I don't get to spend regular time in the gym. But the moment I get back to spending time in the gym, usually within about a month or 6 weeks, you start to notice very quickly My body seems to be genetically designed to A, doing a lot of heavy exercise, and B, not eating potatoes. Don't know why. Nice. Would it be right to think the South African Air Force's plan of 8 Hadley Page Victor B-2s was related to South African nuclear weapons program? Oh no. It's more about their ego program. We'll leave it to outside.
The South African Air Force's plans to deliver their nuclear weapons was parachute bombs from their Canberras.
Yeah.
That was the plans for delivering the warheads. The Victors had nothing to do with it.
KVG, I don't mind. I'm just going to say I will allow Fleet of Oceans 2 words to answer this question of the aesthetic opinions of the SMS Budapest, 1896. You're allowed 2 words to sum it up.
It's neat.
Okay. Right, Knight 681. Question 2 or 3. There are plans to build 650 submarine Spitefuls and 150 submarine Seafang Mark III. Ready to replace the early Seafires? Yes, and also because, let's be honest, the British were planning at that time when they were ordering that for the invasion of Japan and the sheer number of aircraft and things they'd go through in that scenario. Knights, question 212. So when the Iron initially placed the order for 450 Canadian car and foundry SB-1W Helldiver Mark 1s, which carriers were they intended for? All carriers. In the nicest way, they wanted some dive bombers for all of them. Plus they wanted some land-based dive bombers, and you also expect to go through some aircraft. So let's be honest, some people think you're buying aircraft and you're just thinking about deploying them. No, you're also placing your reserve aircraft and various other things you're going to have in the process to maintain your air group strengths. So you're going to have some aircraft based ashore who are literally sitting in hangars for when the carrier comes back and goes, right, we lost 3 aircraft in that operation. Okay, we got some new airframes. Roll them out.
Nice. I've got some pork for you. He's to fry me off your pork.
If the RAF had McDonnell Douglas DC-10 based tankers in the Gulf War, how much for the US forces does it help them? Tremendously. It's always useful to have a shared tanker for him. Do you want him for some reason?
Oh boy.
No, I've just... yeah.
Give me a second, I'm just going to escort the poodle to where he's required to be.
Question.
He's had his dinner.
Would a Grumman A6F intruder
Yes,
2
he's been
based
taken in the gun.
Would a Grumman A6F intruder 2 based EA6 Prowler electronic warfare planes have been a step before the EA-18G Growler? I would assume so, I suppose. The Intruder.
Good boy.
The A6F, the Intruder. I mean, it's not really an ideal platform for an electronic warfare asset. It's a single seater for one thing.
Poodle has apparently gone to bed.
Really, it's really not ideal. Like the Prowler is just way better as a platform because it's a 2-seater. An intruder-based electronic warfare aircraft is a bad idea.
Yeah, you don't want to go to you want to keep either the Prowler in service or you want to go to the Growler. The Intruder is not a good scenario for you for that role. Would the Grumman A6F Intruder have been intended to replace the early Vault? To an extent.
No, because the whole. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry.
It's to an extent,
Wait,
but it's not a complete overlap.
Hang on, I just realised the Prowler Knights. I've just realised. No, Clarke. Question 210 is literally just asking the Intruder. So he's talking about the Intruder 2, which never went anywhere. But so he's basically saying if the Intruder 2 happened, would you have a Prowler 2?
No.
So, all right.
No.
I
Question
finally
210.
understand what he means.
Well, I suppose yes, you would have it, but it's
I finally understand what he means now.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you have an Intruder 2, well, first things first, at night, the A7 Corsair was already replaced by the Intruder, the original Intruder. So the Intruder 2 would be replacing the Intruder, not the Corsair. As far as I'm aware, there wasn't a Corsair 2. Well, okay, no, there was a Corsair 2, but the Corsair 2... Oh, that's... They freeze the name. This is why it's really confusing. Wrapping my head around USN designations.
Yeah.
But no, the Intruder replaced the Corsair 2. That's what the original Intruder did. So the Intruder 2 would just replace the Intruder as the USN's strike aircraft.
And in answer to someone just put in a question: has anyone pre-ordered the Price of Victory: A Naval History of Britain, 1814 to 1945, by Nicholas N.A.M. Rogers? Yes, I have pre-ordered the paperback. I haven't pre-ordered the hardback. I'm tempted to. I've pre-ordered the paperback though. That's out in May 2026. Finally, the next part in his series to follow, Command of the Ocean, those things, is coming. Question 209: would the Grom A6F Intruder 2 with that? Yes, it is to extent to replace the Vault A7 Corsair, but it's also got other roles planned for it.
We just did.
Oh yeah. Question 208. Yeah, 208. What was the modified 12.7 centimeter doppelflak idea the Germans had? Which one? Honestly,
I think that's the whole. It's the whole series of ideas that, you know, the modified 127s that went on top of the flak towers.
Yeah.
I think it's the various ideas that, like, there were so many modified doppelflak ideas based on that mounting that the Germans had. It's not even funny. As soon as they realized that mounting worked, the Navy and the Army spun off so many different wild ideas on what they could possibly do with it, that we'd be here for another hour talking about it. You are going to have to qualify.
Right, so why was the IJN so keen to get rid of the Imperial Russian ships if they captured when they got a chance to do so? Because they were old.
Well,
and because they were also... They had issues. But they kept them for as long as they were useful to grow their fleet size, and then they got rid of them. It's like most people do with ships, you know, when you have ships which are getting old, out of date, and were built by someone who had questionable financial and industrial management. Henk, what tonnage did the 35% treaty allow Germany build for battleships? Literally, it's 35% of whatever the British had. So whatever the British had in battleships, heavy cruisers, light cruisers, destroyers, they were allowed 35% of the declared tonnage. So that's it. You have to look at what did the British have, and then you have to work out 35% of that. Or rather, what are the British declaring as having, versus what the British have. Those two things can be different. Question 206. In Hearts of Iron Against All Odds, the Japanese operated Avro Canada CF-105 arrows. Would the Avro Canada CF-105 arrow have ever suited their needs? That's a computer game one, and that's computer game histories, and yeah, in that scenario I suppose they do, but in real life I can't see the Japanese buying a Canadian fighter aircraft, mainly because they probably want to build their own. Question 205. Even the American ones they buy, they build their own versions on the contract usually. Question 205. How cursed the idea of 5 666-inch Edinburgh subclass tank cruisers? It's not cursed. It's fairly sensible. But the British were trying for 16 guns with 4 quadruple turrets. That's cursed because that's quadruple turrets. 5 triple turrets to get 15 guns, you know, nice way, that's not cursed. That's just what other people are doing. If the Question 204, if the Imperial Japanese military hadn't been disbanded due to World War II, would its IJAAF and IJNAF have ended up changing with the times? Who knows? It depends. How quickly do they kill each other? No, seriously. There is the whole point that if there is a good argument to be made by some people that if the Japanese hadn't started World War II when they did, they could have been facing civil war between the two factions because they're getting quite that detrimental to each other. Black Max, potential other names of Dreadnought being a class: Devastation, Destruction. Yeah.
They don't have to begin with D. It's worth pointing out.
No. Honestly, a Dreadnought class does not have to begin with D. Agincourt is an option. There's all sorts of things options.
The names would probably have been the names given to the Dreadnoughts. You would have had Dreadnought, St. Vincent, and then the one that came after St. Vincent.
Yeah, probably would have just gone with the capital ship names because that's what the Royal Navy usually work through. Let's be honest, that it could have been, if it hadn't been for Agamemnon and Lord Nelson already being built in the previous systems, who knows what they could have gone with. But honestly, the Dreadnought class, it is likely that the British just go with the battleships which come after them. It is quite likely that they literally just go, right then, we've got HMS Dreadnought, now we're going to have Bellerophon, Temeraire, and Superb follower on. And let's be honest, when you look at Bellerophon, Temeraire, and Superb, they do look like Dreadnoughts modified. And it's very mildly modified. They're very mildly modified. Very, very mildly modified.
Yep.
Black Moses, I fixed up my IGN at Night Patreon question. Thoughts? IGN at Night. IGN develops night carrier doctrine tech and pilot training on par with the 1939 RN, building Taiho and light carriers and escorts. No Yamamoto. If that question gets voted, it'll be an interesting discussion, but you have basically changed history completely. So it's going to be completely my logic, logic, and so there's only going to be a certain period I'll be able to go up to. Because if they're getting it in 1939, 1941, and they're building those, and they built Taiho-like carriers and escorts, no Yamamotos, then they've probably got like 3 to 4 of those carriers come into service. It's going to be interesting. But the first thing that's going to could happen, and this was a nice attack tech, is why do you wait till 7 a.m. on Sunday morning to attack the US Navy? You don't. You attack them at night. The strike's going in the dark. And that is going to... Considering the air defences at Pearl, that's going to cause even more problems. Jacob, were the bigger World War II era naval ships strengthened for ice sailing? Not really.
Not at all.
Blackburn, Maximus, Akagi, Beskel. The 1929 stock market crashes delayed to 1930. London Treaty allows a slow build of capital ships. What impact could this have and what other potential changes? If it allows for a slow build of capital ships, it's going to help the infrastructure stay around, and it's going to depend on what the slow build is. Is it a case that in any 5-year period, any sort of let's say 4-year period, the British and Americans are allowed to build 5 capital ships. The Japanese, Japanese 3, and the French and Italians 1.75 ships, or is it a case of is that what is your slow build? Is it a 2-year period, a 3-year period, 4-year period, 5-year period? What's the span and how you're structuring it? That's going to affect things. But the biggest thing it's going to do is it is going to bring new ships into service from 1930 onwards. And that means that you are going to get a slight difference in World War II terms, because you're going to have for the British and possibly the French and... Well, definitely for the French, because they built Dunkirks anyway. But basically, for the treaty powers, they're going to have far more modern, i.e. less than 10 years old, capital ships in service. Far more modern ships in service. And the thing is, they're probably going to be built faster. And again, they are going to be... Whatever is built is probably going to be outnumber whatever the Germans have built. And so it's just going to raise things like Force Z, Plan Z, etc. is just going to be raised in its problems and numbers it's got to include.
I mean, the Germans are... it's laughable the Germans could even consider finishing Plan Z. It's not a viable naval rebuilding program for the German state, given what it's been through. Dreckstrom.
Yeah.
But the less said about that debacle, the better.
Right. Verdun. Actually, the first G3 or N3s were generals. The G3s were going to be I think the Nelson class. Honestly, I'm pretty much certain because Rodney and the other names, they were being transferred over from the Admiral class. And the fact that they have Nelson and Rodney ready to go for Nelrods and quite so accepted means they were gone a class prior to that. And that means, to my mind, it was probably going to be the G3s. And there are people who like to say Saint names. I've done a whole video about why Saint names were not the things for the N3s. The main reason was that to the Royal Navy, that was popish. And that didn't go with their naming convention. I think you're more likely they're going to be named for great battles. You're more likely to find the N3s named things like Agincourt, Trafalgar, those things, rather than named for saints. The Royal Navy likes admirals and battles when they want to make a point. Okay. Right, thank you everyone. Thank you. I think Steve's given us a totals of raise. We've raised $99 US, 89 Canadian dollars, and 45 pounds, which my poodle will be especially happy. Thank you very much, because hopefully that will pay for at least a couple of Kallax bookshelves, which will be useful because, frankly, let me put it this way. I've calculated that on average each box contains 1.5 shelves worth of books. So if I get 2 more of those, that's 16 shelves, which works out at roughly 10 boxes go, which is it's a considerable number. Admittedly, he says that looking at the stack next to him, which has 9, 18, 30, 36 boxes in it.
I'm very pleased that I was able to help.
There's another stack off to my front, which has another 20 in it, and then I don't want to count the ones behind me. Currently, I'm very happy. I have managed to empty a total of 5 boxes of books into that one bookshelf I had, and I have got 5 boxes. Well, actually, no, 7 boxes open, which I can pour through, but I can grab books out of. But that's about the maximum amount. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. And sorry to be putting this on it. I said my original plan was, thanks to Patreon and the money coming through, I was going to use this month's Patreon money to literally buy the wood, buy the door, hang the door myself, put up the shelves myself, and then go, ta-da! And instead I'm having to go, please help me, because I have to, pay someone to hang the door. And I do need a door, because I don't know if you heard this evening, the washing machines are running, so we had the washing machine noises. And whilst the noises from the computer are something I can deal with, the washing machines are a whole different thing when they're running. And they have to be run. It's a family house. These things need to be done. And I'm not the kind of person who's going to go, no, I'm doing a live. You can't run the washing machines. That sounds terribly selfish to me. I try and adjust it so the mic doesn't pick them up as best I can, but, you know. Thank you very much, Aaron, for all your support. And thank you, Fleet, for helping out this evening. Covering when I went off to have to...
Only too glad to help, as always.
Thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you, everyone, for chatting. I'm going to make the questions, the vote for the October patron go live this evening, so I'm just letting people put in last questions, because someone literally messaged me this morning and said, I want to put some questions in. I went, right, and I will give you till after I finished Bruships tonight, and then if the questions aren't in, then I'm sorry they're not getting in till November's vote. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Architect. Thank you, Paul Amos. Thank you,
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Salve 8 Nature's for done. Thank you, Mega Scrow. Thank you, DG40. Thank you, everyone who's donated, everyone who's supported. And, yeah. Each 2x4 Kallax is roughly 50 quid. Yes, so it should be at least be. Well, I'm working out. I've mentally taken off the money which good old YouTube takes off, and I've worked out. I reckon it'll probably buy 2 to 3 of them, at least 2, plus stands each another 15 quid each. And technically, I'd like to get 3 stands because then all 3 would be rafted up away from things which happen on the floor occasionally when doggies are around. Speaking as at least having someone who's actually cleared up a pile of sick already today because a doggy found a bit of apple from a tree which had fallen down because we have an apple tree down. Managed to make themselves a little bit sick. Don't worry, the vet says they're okay. That was a fun conversation on a Sunday.
Well,
You know, it's fine. Thank you very much, Aaron. Take care, and have a nice evening. How did
Goodbye.
Duke of Petulant guess it was the Corgo, my answer? Yeah. There was a reason the poodle was in with me this evening. Thank you, everyone. Take care, and thank you again. Thanks especially for...
goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome.